Well, the Torah portion this week is Kedoshim. This is kind of where it is literally the center of the Torah, both literally and figuratively, the center of the Torah. And this is where we've seen the pattern of Torah being spelt out every 49 letters. You get Torah spelt out in Genesis, then backwards in Deuteronomy, in Exodus, and then backwards in Numbers, and it's all pointing to the center. And then you get Yehovah spelt out every 7 letters in the central book. And the center of the central book is what we're going to look at today, and it's called Kedoshim, and it means set apart ones or holy ones. And it's where we are to focus our thoughts about how we are to walk with Yehovah. We've looked at what it is to become clean, the realms of the unclean, then the clean. The next stage is the holy. Okay, the clean is really the central point between the unclean and the holy. So let's start. If you look at this picture that's here, okay, this picture is going to come up quite a bit throughout the Torah portion. All of the laws that are given about how to be the set-apart ones, this picture is going to be there. And when you see it, I want you to think about the nature of what's being shown there. Okay, the nature of what light is to darkness, because that's what being holy is to the unclean world. We've looked at the fact that the unclean world is all associated with death. Okay, what is unclean brings death. Both physically, the physical things which are unclean are all associated with death, and to be unclean spiritually is the things that bring death, sin in other words. Okay, what is to be holy? If you walk in what is holy, that's what brings life. That's where eternal life is. So you can't get any more opposed to each other than light and darkness. Light casts out darkness. Darkness cannot exist in its presence. So when you're trying to think of holy as opposed to unclean, think of it like that. Okay, the unclean cannot be in the presence of the holy. The unclean physically comes into Yehovah's presence. It causes it to die. Okay? Mark 1:23-24 says, "And there was a man in their congregation," this is in Capharnaum, "with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, what do we have to do with you, Yeshua of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the set-apart one of Elohim." Okay, so that's what the Torah portion's called, isn't it? Set-apart ones. Yeshua is called the set-apart one of Elohim. Romans 8:29, of course, we're to be conformed to his likeness. So he was the set-apart one of Elohim. We are to be the set-apart ones of Elohim. And that's what we're called all the way through the New Testament. You can kind of miss it because we're used to the word saint. Okay? But the word saint actually means set-apart one. Not really in the Old Testament. Sometimes in the Old Testament. Usually in the Old Testament it means kind one. But in the New Testament, when you read saint, it's referring to a set-apart one. So do you not know that the set-apart one shall judge the world? Do you not know that the Kedoshim shall judge the world? So what we need to get a grasp on is how we actually become Kedoshim. And it's all to do with, yes, separation from the world. The world is subject to death. Death is entered into the creation. World subject to death. If you think about what it is within the world that we need to be set apart from, it's actually the nations, the Gentiles, and you'll see this in a lot of the laws that it actually mentions that you're to be set apart from the abominations of the Gentiles. So the way that the Gentiles live, the way that the nations live, is not how Yehovah's nation is supposed to live. That's what we're to be set apart from. 1 Peter 1:13-25 says, "Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, being sober, set your expectation perfectly upon the favor," some translations will say grace here, "upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. As obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance," not conforming yourself to the ways of the world. There's a way, isn't there, that people will just live in the world, call it being worldly. Okay, that's what we're to be set apart from. We don't conform ourselves to that anymore. So as we go through, we'll be looking at what those former lusts were. Instead, as the one who called you is set apart, so you also should become set apart in all behavior. And that's kind of what this Torah portion is going to lay out for us. Because it has been written, be set apart, for I am set apart. And if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear. Now it's interesting because in this Torah portion, it deals with partiality in judgment. Obviously, this is talking about be set apart as I am set apart, which is also from this Torah portion. This concept is something that we'll look at what it's actually talking about with fear here. Knowing that you were redeemed from your futile way of life inherited from your fathers. Again, the Gentiles, the nations, the futile way of life, that's what you've been set apart from. Not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah as of a lamb, unblemished and spotless. Foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes. And this came up in a conversation recently about what it meant for Yeshua to have been slain before the foundation of the world. Was he literally slain before the foundation of the world? No, it was just known that he was going to be slain. It was always part of the plan, in other words. Who through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in Elohim. Now that you have cleansed your lives, you've set yourself apart from that realm of death, in obeying the truth through the Spirit to unfeigned brotherly love. Love one another fervently with a clean heart. And this is another command which is going to be in the Torah portion. So Peter is actually making reference to a particular piece of scripture. And when you see New Testament writers quote from the Old Testament, often the entire writing is going to be a commentary almost on that piece of scripture. They're going to be drawing from that to teach. Having been reborn, not of corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the living word of Elohim, which remains forever. Okay, his holy word, his set-apart word. You've been reborn according to that. You've been set aside from the futile way of life. Because all flesh is as grass, and all the esteem of man is the flower of the grass. The grass withers, and its flower falls away. Okay, so we have a reference to death here. But the word of Elohim remains forever, and this is the word announced as good news to you. So the gospel that was announced to these people, what was it? It's exactly what Peter's drawing from here. It's this piece of scripture, okay, from Leviticus. All of the word of God prior to that point. They weren't going about with copies of the New Testament, were they? So how they are to be set apart, how they are to be put into the realm of life, eternal life, is by the word, and he's particularly making reference to what we're going to read today. So again, you've got the realm of the unclean where death dwells. Yehovah cannot dwell where death is, okay, because he is literally set apart from it. He's, again, if you think of the analogy of light and darkness, okay, you can't have darkness existing in the same place as light, can you? The light just vanquishes the darkness as soon as it's there. It works the same way with Yehovah. Proverbs 4:18-23 says, but the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn. So again, we get this analogy made in the scripture that shines ever brighter unto the perfect day. And this is how our walk is supposed to be. Okay, we learn these things. We learn how to be Kedoshim. We conform ourselves to the image of his Son, and where our light that we shine becomes brighter to the perfect day, which is going to be the restoration of things when he returns. The way of the wrong is like darkness. They do not know at what they stumble. We've got the light of his word. My son, listen to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Shema is the word that's used there. Shema my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not depart from your eyes. Cherish them in the midst of your heart. Again, if you Shema, you will cherish his word, you'll love him. For they are life to those who find them and healing to all their flesh. So again, the holy is the realm where life comes from. It's the source of life to us. Follow the commandments. If you follow the commandments, you'll find life. You'll be destined for eternal life. If you don't, you go after what's unclean that makes you unclean in spirit, it'll lead to death. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the sources of life. And we'll look at something that we're to guard ourselves against later in the second part, which might be useful for you. 1 Peter 2, 1-11 says, having put aside then all evil and all deceit and hypocrisies and envyings and all evil words, as newborn babes desire the unadulterated milk of the word in order that you grow by it. Okay, so the path of the righteous shines brighter until that perfect day. Put aside all of this nonsense, the unclean realm. Now we're becoming holy, more holy each day. Indeed, if indeed you have tasted that the Master is good. And again, all of the letters in the New Testament are written in this way. They're written to the chosen. And you've just got little things like this in it. If indeed you've tasted that the Master is good. Because there's going to be a whole bunch of people who haven't understood that. They don't understand who he is. They don't understand what the word actually is. And that it tends to life. And that it makes them holy, and then they will have eternal life. They don't understand these things. They've not tasted that the Master is good. Drawing near to him, a living stone, rejected indeed by men, but chosen by Elohim and precious. You also as living stones are being built up a spiritual house, a set-apart priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Elohim through Yeshua Messiah. Because it is contained in the scripture, see, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, chosen, precious, and he who believes on him shall by no means be put to shame. This preciousness then is for you who believe. But to those who are disobedient, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Notice there's two audiences here, okay? Those who believe and those who are disobedient. And a stone is stumbling and a rock that makes for falling, who stumble because they are disobedient to the word to which they also were appointed. They can't extricate themselves from the unholy, from the unclean realm. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a set-apart nation, a people for his possession, that you should proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Again, we've got the analogy made there. Who once were not a people, but now the people of Elohim, who had not obtained compassion, but now obtain compassion. Beloved ones, I appeal to you as sojourners and pilgrims to abstain from fleshly lusts which battle against the life. Okay, the life comes from being holy, being set apart, being sojourners and pilgrims, being set apart from the Gentiles and the worldly way of life. Abstain from those lusts because they battle against the life which you're striving for. So we start in Leviticus chapter 19. It says, and Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to all the congregation of the children of Yisrael and say to them, be set apart ones, for I, Yehovah, your Elohim, am set apart. Each of you should fear his mother and father and cherish my Sabbaths. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. So that's weird, isn't it? Because we used to, you should honor your mother and father. That's not the word that's used here. It's a different word. Okay, it means fear. And it does mean fear. So what's it actually talking about? What type of fear? Because it is talking about fear. Joshua 4, verse 14 says, and on that day Yehovah made Yehoshua great before the eyes of all Israel, and they feared him as they feared Moshe. Okay, so it's kind of like, I don't know, respect puts it too low. It's talking about fearing the consequences of disobeying these people. They feared Moshe, they feared Yehoshua. This is how you're to have that reverence and that fear for your parents. 1 Samuel 14, 24-26 says, and the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Shaul had placed the people under oath, saying, cursed be the man who eats food until evening, and I have taken revenge on my enemies, therefore none of the people tasted food. Now, on a side point, we looked at some verses the other week, didn't we, about when a day was, when it defines a day, okay? I want you to notice here that it says, they were distressed that day, okay, that day, because Shaul had said, cursed be the man who eats food until evening, okay? It's not they were distressed that day because Shaul had said, cursed is the man who eats food before the day starts tomorrow. Okay, again, that day is defined, and then it says until evening as that day. It says, and all of day of the land came into the woods, and there was honey on the ground. And the people came into the woods and saw the honey dripping, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. Same thing, okay? The oath was, you will be cursed if you eat. They came into the woods, and there was honey on the ground, and they wouldn't even put it in their mouths because they feared the oath. Okay, there's that respect that they had for it there because they feared what would happen if they transgressed against it. So this is what we're commanded to have towards our parents. Leviticus 19:30 says, cherish my Sabbaths, and we'll look at this later on, and fear my set-apart place. Fear my set-apart place, my holy place, my tabernacle. Have fear towards it. Well, why would they fear the set-apart place? 1 Samuel 12:18 says, and Shemuel called to Yehovah, and Yehovah sent thunder and rain that day, and all the people greatly feared Yehovah and Shemuel. So we see this fear. And of course, they'd fear the set-apart place, because what have they been told about the set-apart place? If you go there in your uncleanness, or if you don't separate yourself from Israel in your uncleanness, then you will die in your uncleanness. So again, it's fearing this, fearing the set-apart place, fearing the commandments of Yehovah when they're given, fearing what it would actually be to transgress against them, and not having that mindset of, oh, well, maybe I'll break the commandment, maybe it'll be okay. This wants to break the commandment. It's actually all different mindset, isn't it, to fear Yehovah. Do not turn to idols, and do not make for yourselves molded gods. I am Yehovah your Elohim. This word turn here, okay, it's not shuv, it's not like repentance. The word is panah, and it's the root word of panim. Okay, it's the root word of face. So what it's talking about is do not turn your face, your attention to these things. And these words that are used throughout Scripture, like remember the Sabbath day, fear Yehovah, it's about actively putting your attention on that thing and actually making it important. But don't turn to idols, and do not make for yourselves molded gods. I am Yehovah your Elohim, and the word for make is asa. It's to do, to build. Don't do that to the other gods. Of course, the best example that we've got of them doing this is in Exodus 32, 5-8. It says, and Aharon saw and built an altar before it, and Aharon called out and said, tomorrow is a festival to Yehovah. So these things that are being talked about to not put your attention on aren't necessarily a pagan god. Okay, it's saying don't build them for yourselves. Don't make these things. Don't make them according to your image. Don't call them Yehovah. Don't say this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. Okay, Yehovah, because that's what people do, isn't it? They've got another God in their minds who they can worship in a different way. They say, oh, I know that his word says to do that. And I know that that's what he finds acceptable. But the God that I worship is actually okay with just this once, me not doing this thing, or me doing it differently, making another God. And they rose early on the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. So they were bringing burnt offerings, they were bringing peace offerings. But what were they doing? They were doing it their own way, weren't they? They were saying, we'll bring up these offerings to Yehovah. He'll be pleased with these offerings. Even though a few chapters before, they were told not to make molded gods of gold or silver. And Yehovah said to Moshe, go get down, for your people who you brought out of the land of Mitzrayim have corrupted themselves. He didn't say, wow, look, they're bringing offerings to me. I've just brought them out of Egypt, and isn't this great? They're down there, they're bringing offerings to me. This is brilliant. No. He was offended because they didn't listen to his word exactly as he'd said. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf and have bowed themselves to it and sacrificed to it and said, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. They've turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. And how many people is that true of? Okay, with their molded calf God. This, as Kedoshim, is something that we cannot be doing. We are to be holy to Yehovah, as he is holy, in the same way that he's holy. And when you bring a peace offering to Yehovah, bring it for your acceptance. And next week we'll be looking at what it is for a sacrifice to be acceptable. It is in the same day you sacrifice it. And on the next day, and that which is left on the third day is burned with fire. So if it is eaten at all on the third day, it is abominable, it is not accepted. And he who eats it bears his iniquity, because he has profaned the set-apart offering of Yehovah, and that soul shall be cut off from his people. So this law has come up now 3 times in the book of Leviticus. This is important. Yehovah ascribes importance to it. Okay, the peace offering, bring it for your acceptance. The peace offering was a free will offering. And the thing that sticks out to me here that I've noticed is that people, when it comes to a free will offering, when it comes to offering something that you don't have to Yehovah, people kind of play fast and loose with it and think, again, like the people with the golden calf bringing their offerings, their burnt offerings and their peace offerings. They're kind of like, well, you know, we'll bring this and surely Yehovah will be happy. I don't even have to bring this. This is specifically told to us, though, no, do it according to the instructions. Everything that you do, make it exactly according to the instructions. It doesn't matter whether or not you have to do it or not. If you're going to ascribe Yehovah's name to it and make it about him, make sure that it's according to his instructions. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. And do not glean your vineyard or gather every grape of your vineyard. Leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Okay? And you'll find Gentiles who have this attitude. But Yehovah has got a particular favoring for the vulnerable, for the poor, for the strangers, for the widows, for the orphans. And part of us being Kedoshim is this is important. We'll see a verse later that says, you know, if you're doing this but you're not doing that, then what you're doing is you're transgressing the Torah. This is massively important. We're told all the way through the Torah to particularly focus on the poor and the stranger. So think about it. Think about it in your own lives. When do you focus on the poor and the stranger? When was the last time you did it? It's been a while, then maybe it's something to have a think about. We're to be set apart as he is set apart. He's got a heart for the poor and the stranger. He's set apart in that way. And we're to be set apart. Do not steal. Do not lie. Do not deceive one another. And this is the key part of it. Okay? Because people will have the attitude of, well, I didn't lie. I said something that made someone think something else. But I couched it in terms that were true. So I haven't lied. This kind of legalistic attitude towards it that Yeshua was addressing when he was talking about making oaths. And he was saying it's not about making oaths to Yehovah, it's about making false oaths. Do not deceive one another. Don't deceive somebody. Don't try to bring about something that will cause somebody to think something that's not true and then say, oh, I haven't told a lie. I didn't lie about it. It's fine. Okay? Not Yehovah's heart. We're to be set apart from those people. And do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your Elohim. I am Yehovah. Again, it's right next to this, and it deals with the same thing. Okay, it's not about just not swearing in his name, not swearing using the name of Yehovah, but if you represent Yehovah and you've sworn to someone, you've told them that you'll do something, you represent him, and so you are profaning his name by not doing that thing. Do not oppress your neighbor or rob him. The wages of him who is hired is not to remain with you all night until morning. This is an interesting verse because, again, we come back to the idea of, you know, when does the day start? Okay? The wages of him who's hired is not to remain with you all night until morning. So is that saying that the day starts in the morning? If we read the same law expressed differently in Deuteronomy 24:14-15, it says, do not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, of your brothers or of the stranger who is in your land within your gates. Give him his wages on the same day. That's interesting. It's just said, don't wait all night until morning. Here we've got it says, on the same day. Maybe that's saying then that you would not be doing it on the same day if you waited all night until morning. What's interesting how this verse continues, do not let the sun go down on it. There you go. For he is poor and lifts up his soul to it, so that he does not cry out against you to Yehovah, and it shall be sin in you. Okay? And Yehovah's heart is seen in this. And you can not just apply this to if you are hiring somebody, okay, anybody. If they're poor and they're waiting on something from you, don't just put it off and be like, oh, I'll give them it whenever. Make it a priority in your life. These laws are not just to be read to just pertain to that particular situation, but they show us Yehovah's heart in all of these things. And if we truly meditate on these laws, then we can see how to operate in many different areas of life. That brings me to this. Okay, I've had loads and loads of emails, comments on the videos about when a day starts. And by far and away, the most popular comment about it is, have you not heard what Yeshua said about the day? Okay, he told us this very precisely. He said, Yeshua answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? There you go. Told you right there. There's 12 hours in a day. Okay, is it that clear? Did Yeshua tell us that there's 12 hours in a day here? What did Yeshua tell us here? He told us that there are 12 hours in the day. Okay? The day is then something that he contrasts with the night, which are periods during the 24-hour day. You've got the day, which is the daylight, and then you've got the night, which is the dark time. You see in Genesis 1 verse 5, it says, and Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the first day. So there we've got day and night all being put under the umbrella of the first day. Genesis 3:17 says, and to the man he said, because you've listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree which I commanded you, saying, do not eat of it, cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you are to eat it all the days of your life. Not the nights, though. In the nights you'll be fine. Genesis 7 verse 4 says, after 7 more days I am sending rain on the earth, 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, so is it saying after 7 daylight periods, then there's going to be a nighttime? That will be the first one in the 40 days and 40 nights series. Later it says, and the flood was on the earth 40 days. So we've got days and nights, both used to describe the same period of time. Genesis 21 verse 4 says, and Abraham circumcised his son Yitzchak when he was 8 days old. Okay, do you think it's talking about after 8 daylight periods, he was 8 days old? No, of course not. You know, it's just common vernacular, isn't it? You've got a day describing 24 hours and you've got day describing the daylight. And we've got to look at the context of them. If it's contrasted with the night, then it's not saying that there's only 12 hours in a day. The creation week wasn't only 12 daylight periods. Okay, the creation week was 7 24-hour periods. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind, but fear your Elohim, I am Yehovah. Okay, so this is one of the laws that really, when you read it, you think, were there really people doing this? That were like, that person's deaf, I'm going to have a go at them while they can't hear me. Or when there's a person who's blind walking about, there are people running up with stuff going, have some of that. It's one of those laws that's obviously got spiritual meaning. Matthew 13:13 says, because of this I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. I would say that this is the deaf and the blind, that we're not to put stumbling blocks before. They're deaf, they're blind. And what it makes me think of, Titus 3:9-11, when it says, but keep away from foolish questions and genealogies and strifes and quarrels about the Torah, for they are unprofitable and useless. Reject the divisive man after the first and second warning, knowing that such a one has been perverted and sins, being self-condemned. Okay, don't go to these people and always argue with them. Okay, because probably if you go and argue with them, if they do not see and they're not following the word, what you're going to actually do is draw them into sin, because they're probably going to argue in a way that's not scriptural. And, you know, don't put any stumbling blocks before them, though. Okay, don't do anything that causes them to stumble. Do no unrighteousness in judgment. Do not be partial to the poor or favor the face of the great, but judge your neighbor in righteousness. So this is what Peter included in his passage before. Do not be partial to the poor or favor the face of the great. And it works both ways. Okay? Don't exclude the poor man because you look down on them. But also, don't favor the poor man in a case where it comes to a rich man versus a poor man. Don't look down on the rich person and say, I'm going to favor the poor man in this. Same with the rich man. Okay, don't favor them because they're rich and you think that you're going to put yourself in their good books and benefit yourself. But also, don't look down on them and say, oh, they're rich. Doesn't matter. I'm going to treat them differently. No. Right is right. Wrong is wrong in every situation. Yehovah judges what is right and what is wrong. He's not a respecter of persons. He's not partial to the poor. He's not partial to the rich. He treats them exactly the same. This is one of the ones that is, I don't know, it's probably quite difficult to do, isn't it? When we look at people around us, we are aware, of course, of their circumstances, and it can change how we look at people. But this is part of the light shining brighter until the perfect day. We meditate on these things, we change ourselves, and when we think something that's wrong, we bring it into obedience to Messiah, we bring it into obedience to these things. And we become more and more holy, more and more towards him. James 2, 1 to 13, says, my brothers, do not hold the belief of our Master Yeshua Messiah, the Master of esteem, the Master of glory, with partiality. Okay? For if there should come into your meeting a man with gold rings and a splendid robe, and there should come in a poor one dressed in rags, and you pay attention to the one wearing the splendid robe and say to him, you sit here in a good place, and say to the poor one, you stand there or sit here by my feet. Have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with wicked thoughts? Listen, my beloved brothers, has Elohim not chosen the poor of this world, rich in belief, and heirs of the kingdom which he promised to those who love him? Okay, he didn't look at them and go, oh, they're the poor ones, they're the rich ones. I'm going to divide it up according to that. He's chosen them according to the richness of their belief. But you have shown disrespect towards the poor man. Do not the rich oppress you and drag you into the courts? And these are the sort of things that you can think, oh, well, you know, it's not that important that I'm following that law. Okay? James has a different point of view on it. Do they not blaspheme that good name by which you are called? If you truly accomplish the royal law according to the scripture, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you do well. But if you show partiality, you commit sin, being found guilty by the Torah as transgressors. Okay? And that's partiality, both in terms of partiality for the poor and the rich, and partiality to doing bits of the Torah and not doing other bits. Well, you'll notice that James also draws upon this. Okay, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, in the same Torah portion as what he's talking about. Again, he's drawing from the same piece of scriptures to teach from. Okay? But if you show partiality, you commit sin, being found guilty by the Torah as transgressors. For whoever shall cherish all the Torah and yet offend in one point, he is guilty of all. Okay? People call themselves Torah keepers, don't they? They say, oh yeah, I love Yehovah, I love the Torah. But then they pick and choose. And it can be picking and choosing in the things that we see as bigger things, or it can be picking and choosing with things like this as well, and just dismissing things like this, being like, oh yeah, you know, okay. Yeah, I accept it's in the word, should probably be doing it, whatever. Yeah, give to the poor people, yeah, whatever. Now, if you're showing partiality and doing the Torah, what you're actually making yourself is guilty before Yehovah. You've been cleansed by the blood of Yeshua. Okay, you've entered into that clean realm. You need to be moving towards the holy, and you cherish all the Torah. Okay, but if you offend in one point, you're guilty of everything, because what you've actually done is judged the Torah. You've judged it to not be correct for you, or whatever the case is. And again, it's this molded calf god. You can create a load of different molded calf gods, which are just exactly the same as Yehovah, apart from in one point. Okay, you fail in one point. None of them are Yehovah. If you're not striving to do all of the things in the Torah, then you're striving after another God who thinks that it's acceptable for you to do that. For he who said, do not commit adultery, also said, do not murder. Now, if you do not commit adultery, but you do murder, you have become a transgressor of the Torah. You see, when it's that clear, we can kind of understand it, can't we? We can go, oh, obviously, if I'm not murdering, but I'm committing adultery, then I'm a transgressor of the Torah. But when it comes to the smaller things, we don't see it quite so easily, do we? But whatever part of the Torah you can say, I'm not doing that part of the Torah, you can put it in here. Okay, if you do not commit adultery, but you do break the Torah in that way, you've become a transgressor of the Torah. That's what you are. You can't proclaim to be anything else. It's not a label that you put on yourself and go, I'm a Torah keeper. Like, are you? Well, how are you also breaking the Torah here? Because if you're breaking the Torah, that makes you a transgressor of the Torah, just by definition. You can't call yourself a Torah keeper and break the Torah. They don't work together. Verse 12 says, so speak and so do as those who are to be judged by a Torah of freedom. We know now, we've got this absolute intimate knowledge that that's exactly what we're going to be judged by. And yet we let these things just pass us by. For the judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy, and mercy boasts over judgment. Again, this is talking about in our relations with other people. Okay, we are to be merciful towards them. We're to be forgiving towards other people. People twist this statement all out of shape and they say, oh, you see, look, when it comes to being judged by Yehovah, he's going to give you mercy because he's not going to judge you. He puts mercy over judgment, and he does. But what does he say? He says that he doesn't wish that anyone should perish. Doesn't mean that no one's going to perish. He doesn't wish that anyone should perish, but that all would repent. So he wants mercy for everyone. Mercy is much better than judgment, but to get the mercy, you've got to repent. Verse 16 says, do not go slandering among your people. Do not stand against the blood of your neighbor. I am Yehovah. We've looked at this before. But every time it comes up, it's necessary for us to look at exactly what it means, because this is one of the things that people kind of get an understanding of, or a layer of understanding of, and then it kind of slips, or it comes up a situation where you don't really assess that situation in terms of this. Proverbs 26:22-27 says, the words of a slanderer are as dainty morsels. This explains the problem to us. Okay, the words of a slanderer are as dainty morsels. We love to hear words of slander because it makes us feel better about ourselves, our own failings. Oh yeah, that person, particularly if it's a righteous person. We love to hear the words of a slanderer against the righteous person. Burning lips with an evil heart are like earthenware covered with silver dross. That's how Yahweh sees us. He who hates pretends with his lips and lays up deceit within him. Though he speaks kindly, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Okay, somebody who goes around slandering other people, when they come to you and they speak kindly, are you going to believe them? There are 7 abominations in his heart, an unrepentant slanderer. Hatred is covered by deceit. His evil is disclosed in the assembly. Okay, the Yehovah is very kind of black and white with us. We've got all these layers of delusion and deception, haven't we, going on? About, oh, it was okay for me to say this about this person because of this or because of that. Yehovah is very black and white over it, and he's like, no, you can't be doing that. Proverbs 10:18 says, he who hides hatred has lying lips, and he who sends out slander is a fool. Matthew 18:15-18. If your brother sins against you, go and reprove him between you and him alone. If he hears you, you have gained your brother. Okay, so someone does something, it's wrong. Okay, is the right thing to do to go to other people? And I don't know. Somebody said to me yesterday, oh, it's not slander because I was seeking wise counsel of this person who always makes me calm down when I'm angry. Okay, well, if you think that you've got a wiser way to do it than the word of Yehovah, then go right ahead. If he does not hear, take with you 1 or 2 more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word might be established. And this is where these things start to get a bit uncomfortable for us, and where the enemy can come in and start to suggest these other ways of doing things which might be better. oh yeah, it would be better actually to go and speak about it with people first. Okay? The enemy gets in. I've seen a lot of these situations play out, and without exception, it has always come to reconciliation between the people where they've started to understand where the other person's coming from if this method is followed. Obviously, it's the word of God. It's obviously going to tend to life, but it's very difficult for us to do these things. One, because we're not holy, or we're striving to become holy, and we're walking in the ways of the Gentiles. We walk in the ways that they think are correct to do things. But also just because we become uncomfortable when it comes to dealing with things according to this, because we don't like confrontation. If he refuses to hear them, say it to the assembly. And if he refuses even to hear the assembly, let him be to you like a Gentile and a tax collector. Of course, the proper procedure. If somebody's just unrepentant, you've told them, you've gone with another person who's told them, the assembly's told them that they're in the wrong, and they're just like, yeah, whatever. And obviously at that point, you make them like a Gentile and a tax collector to you. Proverbs 25:10-11 says, plead your case with your neighbor himself. Do not disclose the secrets of another, lest he who hears it put you to shame and your evil report turn not back. Because you can go to people, can't you? You can tell them what the problem is. You can tell them how you've been offended by this other person. But then, you've got no control over that. The words, don't tell anybody else, are worthless, aren't they? Okay? Do you reckon that's ever worked? Probably not. Okay, lest he who hears it put you to shame, as it becomes known that you're a slanderer. Can't do anything then. It's the information's out of your hands. James 4:11 says, brothers, do not speak against one another. He that speaks against the brother and judges his brother speaks against Torah and judges Torah. And if you judge Torah, you're not a doer of the Torah, but a judge. And the Torah gives us a very understandable way of dealing with these things, which we're about to look at. If you take it upon yourself to do it a different way, you've become a judge of the Torah, which probably isn't a good position to be in. Proverbs 20:19 says, he who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with him who speaks smoothly with his lips. Okay, and we can very much just read over things like this and be like, oh, well, I'm just not sure how I'd do that. Do not associate with them. But that's in the context of approach them about their sin. Then if they do not repent, do this. It's not just, if someone makes a mistake, then that's it. Don't associate with them anymore. 1 Timothy 5:11-13 says, but refuse the younger widows, for when they become headstrong against the Messiah, they desire to marry, having guilt because they set aside their first belief. Moreover, they learn to be idle, going about from house to house, and not only idle, but also gossips and busybodies, speaking what is improper. And the word makes it clear that this is something that women do. Okay? Someone said to me the other day when I was talking to them about this, they said, oh, you need to read the book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, then you'd understand it. I was like, what? She was like, it's just something that women do. They talk to each other, they're more emotional and stuff. I was thinking, this is just insanity. Would it be an excuse if I was like, oh yeah, fornication, it's just something that men do. They're naturally predisposed to fornication. Tell you what, you have gossip and slander and we'll have fornication. How's that? It'd be nonsense, wouldn't it? Okay, people have different tendencies, different sins that everybody has to deal with, different things that everyone's going to find more difficult. Women are going to find this more difficult because they naturally just want to get together and talk about all these things. Can't be doing it. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain and bear no sin because of him. This is how to be holy. This is how to be set apart from the ways of the people around us who will go and slander each other. Don't hate them in your heart. Reprove your neighbor for certain. Okay? If you think someone's done something wrong and you hold that as a thing that they have done wrong in your heart, that's hating them in your heart according to the scriptures we'll see. Do not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am Yehovah. And what people do with the word of God when they read it in an English translation is they will take a word like a grudge and they will ascribe their own meaning to it. Or they'll understand it in terms of what the English meaning of it is. Say, oh, I don't hate them. I don't bear a grudge. I'm not bearing a grudge. But that's just the definition of what a grudge is. We need to understand scripturally what bearing a grudge is. Okay, the Hebrew word is natar, and it means to keep guard, to reserve, or maintain. Okay, there's no such word as grudge in Hebrew. It's just not there. It's natar. It's keeping something against somebody, thinking that person has done something wrong and not approaching them. Because you might think someone has done something wrong, but you don't know whether they have or not until you approach them. So you are to approach people when you think that they've done something wrong. You don't just hold it inside and go, oh, that person did something wrong. I'm not going to go and say anything to them now. Because you don't know. And if you're holding that inside, the thought that that person's done something wrong without any evidence, then that's wrong. Okay? We're to be set apart from that, not to operate like that. Cherish my laws. Do not let your livestock mate with another kind. Do not sow your field with mixed seed. Do not put a garment woven of linen and wool upon you. I think it's interesting. It says at the beginning of this, we'll come to a close in a second, but it says at the beginning of this, cherish my laws. And we've seen what causes someone to cherish his laws. It's if you shema commands. And the commands that you shema aren't always going to make a lot of sense to you. I think it's very interesting that just at the beginning of this, it's not like usual where it says, and you shall cherish my laws if you've done these things. It says, cherish my laws. And then it says, don't let your livestock mate with another kind. Don't sow your field with mixed seed. Don't put on a garment woven of linen and wool upon you. Like, okay. All right then. Do these things, though, you begin to cherish his laws, you begin to get understanding of them. This is my back garden. Okay. I have set apart areas to grow stuff in, and I will not grow stuff in, the same thing. I won't split half of it up. If I was going to grow something, I would split it in half. I'd put a piece of wood there and make it separate plots. Do I know that I need to do that? No, I'm just trying to shema his word, to put that above any other kind of motivation, I guess. When a man has intercourse with a woman who is a female servant engaged to a man, and who has not at all been ransomed nor redeemed, there should be an inquiry, but they are not put to death because she was not free. This is an interesting one, okay? Puts this very much in terms of ownership. This woman is engaged to a man, but he hasn't ransomed or redeemed her, okay? So the fact that she slept with somebody else doesn't go against her as the death penalty, because the man hasn't redeemed her. He's betrothed to her, he's engaged to her, but he's not redeemed her. Okay? Deuteronomy 22, 23 to 24 says, when a girl who is a maiden is engaged to a husband and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city and shall stone them to death with stones. The girl, because she did not cry out in the city. In other words, it's not rape. And the man, because he has humbled his neighbor's wife. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. So you see, this is the usual procedure that is to be followed. However, if it's a female servant and the man's just come along and said, oh yeah, I'll marry you, but he's not redeemed her, Yehovah sees this as different for whatever reason, so make of that whatever you will. And he shall bring his guilt offering to Yehovah, to the door of the tent of meeting, a ram as a guilt offering. But the priest shall make atonement for him with the ram of the guilt offering before Yehovah for his sin which he has done. And the sin which he has sinned shall be forgiven him. Now, this is something that I should mention as well. The whole thing with the earthly tabernacle, okay, when it talks about sins being forgiven someone, it's not talking about your conscience being cleansed with Yehovah. We know that, okay? What it's talking about is these things basically standing like a punishment. So you are to bring this animal. It's like if you were to be given a fine. once you've gone and paid the fine, you would have been forgiven of that sin in the earthly realm. Okay, as pertains to the Torah, your sin would be forgiven. But this isn't talking about your sin being forgiven with Yehovah. We can't get those things confused. Someone asked me about that the other day. When you come into the land and have planted all kinds of trees for food, then you shall reckon their fruit as uncircumcised. For 3 years it is as uncircumcised to you. It is not eaten. And in the 4th year, all its fruit is set apart. Praises to Yehovah. And in the 5th year you eat its fruit so that it increases its yield to you. I am Yehovah, your Elohim. Okay, so there's another law that if we Shema, we're going to cherish his laws. The fruit shall be as uncircumcised to you. So in other words, you don't eat it. Okay, it's profane, it's common. In the 4th year, its fruit is set apart. Now, this pertains to me because last year, when we got married, we were given these trees as a wedding present by Mina that runs the cafe where Charlie goes. And it's funny because I was thinking that last year would be the 4th year of the life cycle of the trees and that the fruit was to be set apart to Yehovah. But something happened to make the trees not bear any fruit or the fruit that was on them to die. Okay, and it's interesting because I rang up the place where we got the trees from and found out that I was actually a year out. So this is the 3rd year. Okay, next year the fruit is going to be holy to Yehovah. And then in the 5th year, we promise something amazing. Okay? In the 5th year, you eat its fruit so that it increases its yield to you. And I'm excited about what's going to happen. I'm excited about seeing the yield of this tree to see if it is like this bumper crop of fruit, because something that Yehovah has promised. Okay? We'll take a break there. When we come back, we'll look at something that I think you'll all find interesting. Well, in this part, I'm going to talk about something that is a problem. Okay, it's something that I've seen as a problem in everywhere from the mainstream Christian church to every Torah fellowship on the planet and this fellowship here. And it's something that people just take on kind of almost unthinkingly. It's something that is taken on almost experientially by the fact that other people talk about it. And so it becomes kind of this mythology that everybody just accepts is right. Everybody accepts that it's true. But we need to examine it because the source that it actually comes from is not good. It's not good for us to be paying attention to these things. It's not good for us to be trying to guide our lives by these things. Deuteronomy 4:15-20 says, therefore, diligently guard yourselves. Okay? Quite a powerful instruction to diligently guard yourself, because you're going to need to do this. You're going to have to be diligent to guard yourself against this. For you saw no form when Yehovah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure. Okay, so lest you should do corruptly and you make this image of Yehovah, which is not really the image of him. The likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. Unless you lift up your eyes to the heavens and shall see the sun and the moon and the stars and all the host of the heavens, and you shall be drawn away into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yehovah your Elohim has allotted to all the peoples under the heavens. So Yehovah has allotted this to all the peoples under the heavens. We're to be holy. This is what we're to be holy and set apart from. All of these people, they make images of what they think spirituality is about, what they think that God is about. Whereas Yehovah didn't show us any image when he appeared. We didn't show them any image. The image that he shows us is his word. That's how he shows us who he is, and that's the only image that we are to have of him, what is discerned through his word. But Yehovah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace. We looked at that phrase. Okay, I think that a better translation, at least to portray its meaning for us in the world, is oppressive melting pot, okay? He's taken you out of the oppressive melting pot, that of the peoples of the world. He set us apart from that. Out of Mitzrayim to be his people, his Kedoshim, an inheritance as it is today, okay? But what people tend to do is they take these pagan forms of spirituality and they ascribe it to Yehovah. They put it over his image and they make it the image of Yehovah when actually his image is only revealed in his word. And yet people kind of take things on by commonly expressed mythology or commonly expressed beliefs and they think that is Yehovah as well. 2 Chronicles 33, 1-2 says, Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, where he did evil in the eyes of Yehovah, according to the abominations of the Gentiles, okay, which were to be set apart from, whom Yehovah dispossessed from before the children of Israel. So, what did he do? It tells us in verse 6. And he made his sons pass through the fire in the valley of the son of Hinnom. Now, this valley of the son of Hinnom, okay, later in the Tanakh, it's called the Valley of Hinnom. It's shortened. Valley of Hinnom in Hebrew is Gay Hinnom, okay? And in the Septuagint version, okay, when we get the Greek word for Gay Hinnom is Gehenna, okay? It's what Yeshua says when he says, don't fear those who can destroy the body, but those who can destroy the body and soul in Gehenna. Because this was a place where people would be burnt up. Okay, and what he's doing is he's making an allusion to the fact that these people are going to be burnt up in the lake of fire. People think, whoa, what's Gehenna? It's something that they would have understood when he said it's better than you get thrown in Gehenna. And practiced magic, used divination and witchcraft, and consulted mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the eyes of Yehovah to provoke him. Okay, so what he did is he went after all of this pagan forms of spirituality. Okay, I'm not saying that these things don't have power, that they don't have spiritual power. I'm saying they do have spiritual power, and we need to be very careful to diligently guard ourselves that we don't take any of this sort of stuff into the worship of Yehovah. Verse 26 says, do not eat meat with the blood. Do not practice divination. Do not interpret omens. Do not interpret signs. Okay, in the Septuagint version it says, eat not upon the mountains, which I would suggest is probably what it should say, rather than do not eat the meat with the blood, because it's talking about these pagan practices. Eat not upon the mountains. You shall not foretell nor use augury. And augury is this interpretation of signs. Okay? Took this from a very new age dodgy website. When I read through it, what I want you to do is listen to it and think, does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the way that I live my life, or the sort of things that I look for in my life and ascribe to Yehovah, this pagan spirituality? Of all the skill sets required for effective manifestation, interpreting signs from the universe can often be the most challenging, and it might be useful to you. Instead of when it says the universe, substitute in there Yehovah, okay? Interpreting signs from Yehovah can often be the most challenging, okay? And we hear all of this, don't we? I'm learning to hear the voice of Yehovah. I'm getting more attuned to hearing what it is that he's got to say, okay? Yehovah wants to say something. He'll say it clearly. He'll say it objectively to you, and he will bring about what he is saying. He doesn't mess about. He doesn't quibble. If he tells you something, then it's because he's in the course of bringing it to being. After all, many of us have spent large portions of our adult lives being told to ignore our intuitions and dismiss gut feelings. So when a law of attraction expert steps in and tells us we need to do something different, it can be tricky to make that massive shift. And yes, for some people it can be tricky. Some people have actually become accustomed to this when they were living in the ways of the Gentiles, of listening to intuitions and gut feelings, and then they come into this knowledge and they attribute them to Yehovah. And it's how Yehovah is going to speak to them now. Okay? And that can lead people astray. Because I know this as well because of personal experience. I'm not talking about something that I'm ignorant of. What happened to me is when I was, I don't know, say 13 properly, I started taking a lot of drugs, experimenting with a lot of things, smoking cannabis, particularly at that age. But as I got older, I took probably every drug you could name. Apart from methamphetamine, I never took methamphetamine. I took all the hallucinogens, I took LSD, magic mushrooms, all of the 2Cs, 2C, 2C7, 2CI, 2CE, 2CB, all of those things that you might not have heard of, broma, dragonfly, and all sorts of ridiculous hallucinogenics. So fixated in the end on ketamine. And all of these things, what they do is they allow you to see a glimpse into the spiritual realm. And as soon as you start to see into the spiritual realm, what happens is you start to see the world in a very different way. And what I started to see was that everybody in the world has just got this really narrow view of reality. They don't even understand that the spiritual realm exists at all. I can see the spiritual realm, and now I'm on this journey of spiritual awakening, and all of the knowledge that comes to me of the spiritual realm is going to be beneficial to me, and I'm going to go after these things, and I'm going to be in a better position than all these people who have no idea of what's going on in the spiritual realm. So I started taking drugs. Don't know, maybe about 4 or 5 years after, I started to have these really, really weird experiences to do with the number 11 and the number 22 at first. Okay, it happened maybe 2 or 3 times, but the first times were to do with the number 11 and the number 22. And I started seeing them everywhere. Okay, every time I'd look at a clock, it would be 11:11 or 22:22 or 11:22 or whatever combination. And I'd see them absolutely everywhere. And I was thinking, this has got some kind of significance. And I attributed its significance to something in my life. What I did is I interpreted it subjectively to be speaking about something in my life at the time. And then it kind of went away for a while. But I was still taking drugs, still starting to see more and more of the spiritual. And it came back. I was working at a firm of solicitors at the time. And it was so significant. It was so, because obviously I was aware that I might just be seeing these things. I might just have become sensitive to the numbers 11 and the number 22. So I might just be seeing them everywhere. Every time I saw it, maybe that was what I was making significant. So what I did, the time I was seeing number 11, number 22, number 33. And as this progressed, it would go to 44, 55, 66, 77. By the time it was 33. So I started to write down these occurrences because I was thinking, is this just me noticing these numbers and they become significant to me, or is this happening in some kind of weird way? So what I did is I wrote down every time these numbers occurred. First 11 times that I wrote this down on this particular day, the only day that I wrote it down, they were to do with the number 11. Okay, these occurrences. Might be, see the email, look at my watch, look at my phone, whatever. First occurrences were to do with the number 11, the first 11. The next set of 11 occurrences were all to do with the number 22. And the next set of occurrences were all to do with the number 33. And I was being very, very careful at this point to notice when I was looking at things, and if I looked at things and the numbers weren't there, or if I looked at them and they were there. And every time I looked, the numbers were there, every time. First 11, 11, next 11, 22, next 11, 33. Then when I looked deeper at the pattern that was happening there, in the first set of 11, okay, say the first one was to do with when I got an email from someone, the time of the email. First one to do with the time of the email. The first one in the next set of 11 was to do with the time of the email. First one in the next set of 11 was to do with the time of an email, 11, 22, 33. And this was true all the way through every one of the set of 11. The second one would be corresponding with the second set, the third set, all the way through. Every one corresponded. The probability of that happening is just astronomical. It's impossible, basically. So I knew that this was something that was specific that was happening to me. And this was so obvious and it was so specific that I knew that I was being guided spiritually by this. And what it did is it led me down a certain path. Okay? When I was interested in all of this, I remember one time I'd gone to the library. I can't remember why I was in the library, but I know that I was in this certain section of books. So it must have been something to do with that, something to do with this spirituality. When I was there, a book fell off the shelf in the library, and it fell open. I picked up the book, and what my attention was immediately drawn to, as it said, an example of synchronicity would be if you were in a library and a book fell off the shelf, open at the page that you were supposed to read. Like, oh. I didn't know what to do with that information. I was alone in the library. I was like looking around at other people like, this is insane. But the point is that it was so significant, it was so specific, and yet it was not from a good source. There are two sources of this sort of spiritual guidance. There's Yehovah, and this was not Yehovah. Okay, it's not the way that he works. But there's another source of this spiritual guidance as well. That is what we're to diligently guard ourselves against. Here are 5 stages to work through. Okay, this is the advice of the pagan New Age website. Become increasingly receptive. Okay, great advice. If you think about how you feel about the idea of interpreting signs from the universe, you might notice there's some anxiety or skepticism in the mix. While this ambivalence is entirely understandable, it reduces your ability to receive. In other words, you need to develop a genuine desire to hear what the universe wants to tell you, to become curious about its signs and willing to accept its answers, even if they come in an unconventional format. Okay? So, in other words, you need to develop a genuine desire to hear what Yehovah wants to tell you, to become curious about his signs and willing to accept his answers, even if they come in an unconventional format. Okay? People have this sort of mythology, don't they, about that's how they walk with Yehovah. Okay? Problem is, we're getting this information from a New Age website. Okay? It is telling us that this information is going to come to the Gentiles, people that we're to be set apart from. We're to only have the image of him from his word. And you're not going to find any of this in his word. One helpful way to boost your receptivity is to read about how signs from the universe have helped other people in their law of attraction work. Not only does this allow you to see that this sort of occurrence is possible, but it also gives you a rough idea of the kind of signs that might be coming your way. Okay, we read before, didn't we, about that women have a tendency to gossip and be busybodies. And this is something that is perpetuated through this. Okay, so one helpful way to boost your receptivity is to hear about how the signs from Yehovah have helped other people in their work. Not only does this allow you to see that this sort of occurrence is possible, but it also gives you a rough idea of the kind of signs that might be coming your way. So you've got people on the periphery who have never experienced this sort of stuff before. And they hear everybody talking about, oh, I got this sign, this weird thing happened the other day, and it guided me to this. So people hear about it, and then they know, well, this might be possible. This is how Yehovah works. So I'm going to pay attention to this, and I know the sort of signs that might be coming my way now. In some cases, the signs are very literal, e.g. a billboard or a flyer encouraging you to do something in particular. However, at other times, they may be more symbolic, e.g. relating to what certain colors or shapes mean to you. And this is a real major problem in this. It's interpreting things subjectively, what it means to you. Because the problem is that these things come from familiar spirits. And the thing with familiar spirits is that they are familiar with you. They know exactly how to get to you, exactly how to speak to you, and exactly what you're going to respond to. Okay? So, don't go by what something means to you, your subjective interpretation of it. Turn your attention outwards. A lot of law of attraction work revolves around your inner life, visualization processes, reciting affirmations, making dream boards, and so on, encourage you to turn your attention inwards. This is important, but so is your ability to look outwards and see what Yehovah is trying to show you in the world around you. What's Yehovah trying to show me in the world? All of these events which happen, maybe it's Yehovah. I'm going to be looking out for these things now, and then everything that happens, I'm going to interpret subjectively and ascribe some kind of significance to, and then feel like I'm being guided on this magical journey by Yehovah. Cultivate a habit of paying attention to what you see on the street during your commute, in your office, and everywhere else you go. Look for unusual or noteworthy things in your environment. Maybe try to mentally or physically note at least 5 of these things per day. Any one of these things might be a sign from Yehovah. Just considering this, you increase your capacity for spotting such signs when they're there and when they're not there. Okay? You increase your capacity for believing that anything that you see might well be a sign from Yehovah. If Yehovah's trying to speak to you, he's not going to do it through these little subjective wisps of nothingness that cultivate some kind of thought in your life. Things that you would have previously in your life maybe not have paid any attention to at all, but now suddenly everything's significant. Yehovah's in charge of everything, isn't he? That must mean that every event has some kind of significance to me. Not how Yehovah uses signs. Yehovah uses signs to confirm or to validate something. He doesn't use them to give significance to every event in your life or potential significance to every event in your life. You shouldn't be going through your life trying to look at everything and trying to see if it's a sign from Yehovah. Start looking for patterns. This is an instruction manual to descend into delusion. Start looking for patterns. Once you become accustomed to picking out interesting things around you, and what's interesting to you, it's the things that are already interesting to you. Okay? If it wasn't already interesting to you, it wouldn't be significant. Yehovah doesn't work like that. Yehovah does give signs, but the type of signs that he uses are objective in nature. An example, I know the Dudex went through a similar thing. Before I'd ever spoken to Ashley about marriage, before there was any expressed romantic interest between us, she started seeing everywhere that she went things about England. Okay, flags, maps, whatever. It's just England, England, England. Something came through their door, which was a thing about Wales and Snowdonia, which later became significant. And she even got a purse that had on it a map of a specific place in England. Anyone guess where it might be? Okay, it's a map of the Wirral in Chester. Really, really specific. You can't interpret that subjectively and be like, what is Yehovah trying to tell me? Maybe it's something about England. It's obvious, isn't it? Before anything had been said, and then what does Yehovah do? He brings about the events that then make sense of those things. So you're like, oh yeah, okay. He has been speaking to me. I didn't know what it was about, but he's brought about this event. Yehovah doesn't do things that he's not going to bring about. He's not going to tell you something that he doesn't then bring about. He's not the author of confusion. He'll bring about something and he'll draw your attention to something over and over and over again. Maybe, I'm not saying this is the only way that he works, but it's objective in its meaning. It's not some subjective flight of fancy that we go on. And then he does it for a purpose. He does it absolutely so that his will is done. And he brings about the thing that he's been speaking to us about. Again, you can either write these down or simply remember them. The key to this is to make this a normal part of your day until it is second nature. How many people do this? How many people looking for signs in the world around them becomes second nature to them? For example, if you're looking for a new partner and are impatient to manifest romance, pay attention. If you keep seeing an advert for one particular concert or restaurant, it could be that this is where you're going to meet the love of your life or meet the person who will eventually introduce you to the love of your life. And these are things that these entities work on specifically. They work on things that are emotive to us, strong drivers in our lives that they know already have strong significance to us, that they are able to manipulate us easily through. And again, I know this from personal experience. I got into divination very, very strongly about divination. And obviously the things that you divine about and the things that you want answers to are things that are very emotive to you, things that are very important to you. So it's all from this side with these entities, because their goal is to get you to believe anything that is not the word of Yehovah. And they'll just come along and they'll just nudge you off course slightly. In the beginning, they'll nudge you off course. And the more you start to respond to these things, as it's saying here, the more that you look for them, the more they can do this. and the more they make you trust in them and not in the word of Yehovah and in the image that he's revealed through the word of Yehovah. And then when you're trusting in them and you're following all of these things that are happening in your life, then they can start teaching you bad doctrine or making you think about things in a particular way and making you think that it's Yehovah, making you think about that thing in a particular way, when actually all they're doing is they're leading you astray. Heighten your own sensitivity. Once you've established the baseline level of ability to interpret signs from the universe, you're in a position to fine-tune and improve that skill set. In particular, start thinking a bit more about your inner life again, this time with the goal of seeing signs from Yehovah in your own thinking. Wow, great advice. Now my own thinking is full of signs from Yehovah. The things that I'm thinking are from Yehovah. Brilliant. That's going to end well, isn't it? Okay, we've descended to a point now where the things that we think, that's Yehovah speaking to me because I thought about it. We are all connected to the energy flow of Yehovah. So repeating motifs in your thoughts can count as signs as well. A good example of this is recurring dreams. While they don't always need to be interpreted literally, they can give you clues about what Yehovah wants you to know. Repetitive dreams about travel might prompt you to consider moving, while seeing an old face in a dream might signal that reconnecting with them could lead to financial abundance or career advancement. Whatever, just interpret it subjectively. Just, if this sort of stuff's happening, then great, it's probably Yehovah speaking to you. If you're thinking about something a lot, probably Yehovah. It's probably guiding you in that. Well, we've got to be careful here to differentiate, because Yehovah does guide us in our lives. Okay, but as I say, he does it objectively. He doesn't leave any kind of question. It's not kind of if, buts, or maybes, or maybe it was something that he said to me, maybe it wasn't something he said to me. No, if he speaks to you, you know that you are being spoken to by Yehovah. Give you an example. Okay, recently, it's come to our attention about buying this building. Okay, makes no sense. Okay, we're quite happy paying this small amount of money that we pay to have pretty much all of the usage of the building all of the time. We don't have the money to spend 100 grand on a building. Doesn't make any sense. Maybe about 4 weeks ago, I can't remember how long it was, said to Charlie that I think basically that Yehovah wants us to buy the building. Charlie said the obvious. Well, all well and good, but we're not paying very much for it at the moment. Why would we take on a building? Why, when we can just rent it and use it? I can't even remember how Yehovah brought it up to me. But from that point onwards, he started showing Charlie. And he started showing him in the way that he shows Charlie these things. Usually when something weird happens on his phone, and Charlie's spoken about it before, okay? Brought up something on Charlie's phone for him to see about the house of Yehovah. Also, when I spoke to Charlie, he was saying, well, maybe it's not a good idea to speak to the guy who owns the building, because maybe then he'll just get into his head that he's going to sell the building. And I was like, oh yeah, fair enough, that would be pretty bad. Then what happens? A woman comes who's speaking to me as I'm unloading stuff into here, who happens to be a Jesuit, which obviously makes you think, better be careful of this person, a Jesuit. And she starts to talk about the fact that maybe they will buy the building. So, what's Yehovah? What's he done there? He's gone, okay, you're worried about this thing. That's a good thing to be worried about. Here is a reason why it might not be good to hold that above the fact that someone else might already buy the building out from under you. Then I started I didn't start getting a stream of them. I got once somebody contacted me about they wanted to use this building. They said, we found your number online, which is so bizarre. So bizarre for them to find my number, because they must have been off the website. We found your number online and we want to rent the building off you. Any other time that it's happened, they've always got in touch with the mission who are actually in charge of renting out the building. And they've said that they wanted to start using the building for this stream of events. Okay, again, taking the situation of us having control of the building all of the time for a relatively small amount of money, taking that and saying, well, maybe now somebody else is going to start coming into this place which is holy to Yehovah, and using it for this stream of events. So all of these things, Yehovah was answering. So we decided that we were going to speak to Rob about it. Decided that we would, who's the guy from Liverpool City Mission, decided that we were going to meet him here at the hall and speak to him about it, the two of us. I rang up Rob to ask him about this. He didn't seem very keen on coming here. He's really, really busy. But he mentioned, he happened to bring up, he said, the last meeting that we had, actually, we were discussing the long-term plans that we've got for the building. I'm like, oh, what long-term plans are these? Of course, what's Rob's long-term plan for the building? They want to sell the building. So, as I say, it's not just us subjectively interpreting things. It's these things coming up. Buy the building, buy the building, buy the building. Then it's not just us. It's Yehovah. He's involved in it as well, and he's driving these things along, and these events happen that show you that it's Yehovah. Then you know, okay, this is Yehovah that's guiding me, because it's not me trying to do anything. I couldn't have done this in my own power. He has brought it about. He has established this thing. So then you know, well, this is Yehovah, because it was him that did it. It's completely different from these subjective interpretations of signs that people get involved in. Release your investment. This is the classic, this one. Finally, due to the inherently subjective nature of sign interpretation, be aware that you may have a tendency to see what you want to see. Oh, really? Fantastic. Okay, so maybe now it's going to give us some amazing piece of advice to avoid this. Sometimes it's not Yehovah speaking to you so much as it is your own desire for change speaking to you. To reduce the likelihood of this, you need to fully surrender yourself to what Yehovah wants to tell you. Oh, brilliant. Just as you're becoming aware, maybe this isn't Yehovah, maybe this is me, or maybe this is a spiritual entity that is misleading me here. It's not according to his word. I know what I'll do. I'll fully surrender myself to this and really go for it. This is going to be brilliant. If you're looking for an answer or some guidance, simply view yourself as a passive recipient of that information and consciously let go of your investment. How do you do that? If you're looking for a specific piece of advice or a specific piece of guidance, how are you ever going to view yourself as a passive recipient of that information when it's so specifically for you? You're not a passive recipient of the information. It's only ever intended for you. It's going to be significant to you. It's not like you're going to get a piece of advice that you think is from Yehovah and you're just going to go, yeah, just be a passive recipient of that information. I won't pay any real attention to it. Trust that the universe, trust that Yehovah really does know what's best for you, even if what it wants to show you isn't the thing you wanted to see. And this is something that I've heard people say over and again. Okay? I know that this is Yehovah telling me this because it's not what my flesh would want. My flesh wouldn't want to do this, so it must be Yehovah. Okay, let's get into what we want, okay, as believers in Yehovah. If we've taken on the Yehovah really does know what's best for us, and then we get a piece of advice, even if it's not what our flesh would want, what it is ultimately what we do want, which is some kind of guidance from Yehovah, which is going to ultimately be for our best. That whole argument is a deception, okay? It doesn't hold water at all. Okay, so now that you recognize this, you can diligently guard yourself that you don't put this pagan New Age image of the way that the universe or God works on top of Yehovah and make that about the worship of Yehovah, because it's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. Now we've got a choice at this point. We can go on and we can read all the scriptures that are about all of this stuff, or we can take a little bit of a break. I realize that, we've been sitting here and it's been quite heavy. So if people want to take a break, then we can take a break, and then we'll go into the scriptures. Or we can continue now. Carry on, okay? Beloved ones, do not believe every spirit, but prove the spirits, okay? I wish that I'd had this advice when all this spiritual stuff started happening to me, because all I could see is this must be good. This is stuff that nobody knows about. This must be the most brilliant thing. So because we come from a material world sort of mindset, when something spiritual happens, we ascribe massive significance to that thing and automatically kind of think it must be good because we're getting some kind of spiritual guidance and we know that Yehovah's in charge of it all, so maybe we should go with that. Not the advice that we get, though. It's don't believe every spirit. Every spiritual experience that you get, every bit of spiritual guidance that you get, don't believe it. Prove the spirits. And we've seen what is of the world that we're to be holy from and what is from Yehovah and the way that he works. 1 Kings 22, 19 to 23. Okay, this is Prophet Micaiah. Then he said, therefore hear the word of Yehovah. I saw Yehovah sitting on his throne and all the host of the heavens standing by him on his right or on his left. And Yehovah said, who shall entice Ahab and go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And this one said this, and another said that. So he's got all of the host of heaven, that which we heard about before, that it's been ascribed to or appointed to the Gentiles to worship. They're all sitting on his right or standing on his right and left. This one said this, another said that. Then a spirit came forward and stood before Yehovah and said, let me entice him. Okay, so this is a spirit that's coming before Yehovah and saying to Yehovah, let me go, I'll entice them. And Yehovah said to him, in what way? And he said, I shall go out and be a spirit of falsehood in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, Yehovah said, entice him and prevail. Go out and do so. And now see, Yehovah has put a spirit of falsehood in the mouth of all these prophets of yours, and Yehovah has spoken evil concerning you. Who put the spirit of falsehood in the mouths of all these people? It was Yehovah. Okay, so let's not think that these things are just automatically not going to happen to us. He does it for a particular purpose, which we'll look at. Deuteronomy 13, 1-5 says, when there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or a wonder, okay, or a spiritual experience, a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder shall come true. They've said this sign, and then it comes true, of which he has spoken to you, saying, let us go after other gods which you have not known. Let us go after other gods that you've ascribed this new age kind of image to, the God that you've not known, and serve them. Do not listen to the words of that prophet, that dreamer of dreams, for Yehovah your Elohim is trying you to know whether you love Yehovah your Elohim with all your heart and all your soul. This is his purpose in it. He wants his people to be Kedoshim. He wants them to be set apart from all of this nonsense. And the only image that he wants them to see of him is his word. He wants them to go back and try all these things by his word. But Yehovah is involved in this. Walk after Yehovah your Elohim and fear him and cherish his commands and obey his voice and serve him and cling to him. And that prophet or dreamer of dreams is put to death because he has spoken apostasy against Yehovah your Elohim. Okay, so Yehovah is using an event that is bad, that he would not have happen, but he's using it in order to achieve his purpose. Who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim and redeemed you from the house of bondage to make you stray from the way in which Yehovah your Elohim commanded you to walk. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. Again, they come. These things just want to knock you a tiny bit off course. They're coming to believers who really want to follow the word of Yehovah. They're going to be subtle. Just going to knock you off a little bit, until you trust the information that comes from a source which is not scriptural. Ephesians 6:11 says, put on the complete armor of Elohim for you to have power to stand against the schemes of the devil. Okay, so what does this tell us? The schemes of the devil are going to be against us. And the way to defend ourselves against this is the armor of Elohim, which it goes on to say is his word. It's all just different ways of saying his word. This is how you defend yourself against nonsense. You don't go experientially off these things and say, well, they must have power. They must be showing me things because they're spiritual in nature. No, we test the spirits. How do we test the spirits? We test them by his word because Yehovah is trying to prove us to see whether we'll follow his word or not. 2 Corinthians 11:13-15 says, "For such are false apostles, deceptive workers, masquerading as apostles of Messiah. And no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It's not surprising then if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works." It doesn't matter what they come and tell you. It doesn't matter if they come and tell you something that's beneficial to you. It doesn't matter if they come and reveal something in his word that's amazing to you. None of that matters. What matters is whether or not it's in accordance with his word that they've come and given you this stuff. In the first place, they're going to masquerade as workers of righteousness. That's how they're going to fool people who pursue after righteousness. Romans 11 verse 12 says, "And if their fall is riches for the world and their failure riches for the Gentiles, how much more their completeness?" Talking of how Yehovah uses people's fall. He uses things that are bad, objectively bad, that he doesn't want to happen. He uses them to achieve his purpose. So we can't reverse engineer a situation and say, well, it had a good ending, so it must have been Yehovah in the first place. That's not how it works. Yehovah knew the end from the beginning, and he knew that he was going to use all of these things to achieve his purpose, but it doesn't mean that that's what he wanted to happen all along, that he would have, if he was in control of it, made these people sin or break his word. 1 Timothy 4:1-2 says, "But the Spirit distinctly says that in the latter times some shall fall away from the belief, paying attention to misleading spirits and teachings of demons." Okay? It's prophesied. That's what's going to happen. Okay? There's going to be this increase in wickedness. People are going to pay attention to the misleading spirits because really they don't know the word well enough to know that these things are bad. Well, they do, and they just ignore it because it's a spiritual experience. Woo, spiritual experience. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared, and this is a major problem because you'll speak to people about stuff like this, but their consciences are seared against it. No, you telling me that I've not been walking with Yehovah all my life? 20 years I've been following his guidance. Consciences are seared against it. They want to listen to the misleading spirits. They want to listen to the nonsense because that really is what they love. They don't love Yehovah because his image is not enough for them, his word. They want these spiritual experiences and to be always guided and to look at everything and, oh, maybe it's Yehovah trying to show me something in this. Judges 6:11-17 says, "And the angel of Yehovah," okay, remind ourselves who this is, this incredibly powerful being that speaks as Yehovah, that is described as Yehovah in many places, one of which we'll see, "came and sat under the terebinth tree which was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezerite, while his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress to hide it from the eyes of the Midianites." This is Gideon, okay? "The angel of Yehovah appeared to him and said to him, 'Yehovah is with you, O mighty brave one.'" What a brilliant message that you would really want to have come from Yehovah, that you'd want Yehovah to be saying to you. "And Gideon said to him, 'O my master, if Yehovah is with us, then why has all this come upon us? And where are all his wonders which our fathers related to us, saying, did not Yehovah bring us up from Mitzrayim? But now Yehovah has left us and given us into the hands of Midian.' And Yehovah turned to him and said, 'Go in this strength of yours, and you shall save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent you?'" It's Yehovah saying it to him directly. Okay? "And he said to him, 'O Yehovah, what do I do? With what do I save Israel?' Sorry. See, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house.' And Yehovah said to him, 'Because I am with you, you shall smite the Midianites as one man.'" How much is he going to want to believe this? That Yehovah is telling him, "You go, I'm with you." And he said to him, "Please, if I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you that is speaking with me." This is the angel of Yehovah. This is Yehovah speaking to him directly. And he says, "Please show me a sign that this is you speaking to me." As I say, Yehovah uses signs to affirm his word. He doesn't use them to give us a kind of a spiritual experience throughout our life that we subjectively interpret. So Gideon wants to know, and he says, give me a sign. And people will pray this, and they'll say, "If this is really you, please give me a sign." And the sign doesn't come. And they go, okay, give me a sign at some future point. And just eke it out and out and out. And then when they see anything that they can subjectively interpret to be a sign from Yehovah, that's, oh yeah, that was the sign. That was the one. Yehovah wasn't powerful enough to give me the sign that I asked for, or do it in the time frame that I'd asked for. He had to give me this subjective sign later on because I don't want to let go of this thing that I think that Yehovah has told me. I've left these in again because they give us signposts as to where we're heading. Okay, so this is how the Spirit truly works. 1 Corinthians 12, 4-11 says, and there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of services, but the same Master. And there are different kinds of workings, but it is the same Elohim who is working all in all. To each one is given the manifestation of the Spirit for profiting. Okay. These are the signs that Yehovah gives. This is why he gives his Spirit. He gives it for his purpose to be achieved. Okay? That's why he gives it. He doesn't give it so that we have a nice magical journey throughout our lives. For to one is given a word of wisdom through the Spirit, and to another a word of knowledge according to the same Spirit. What is wisdom and what is knowledge? It comes from his word, doesn't it? That's what it is. Has anyone ever been in a situation before where you've been talking to someone and just the right scriptures been coming one after another? It's the operation of the Spirit, and he'll give you his word. And to another, belief by the same Spirit, and to another, gifts of healing by the same Spirit. To another, operations of powers or miracles, and to another, prophecy, and to another, discerning of spirits, and to another, kinds of tongues, and to another, interpretations of tongues. But why is he doing all these things? He's doing it for his purpose to be achieved. If you read why all these things come into existence and what they're for the edification of the body, or for the edification of the self, if it's a tongue spoken on your own. But they're to achieve his purpose. That's why he gives it. But one and the same Spirit works all these, distributing to each one individually as he intends according to his purpose. Ephesians 3:14-19 says, for this reason I bow my knees to the Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, from whom all fatherhood in the heavens and earth is named, in order that he might give you, according to the riches of his esteem by power, to be strengthened in the inner man through his Spirit, that the Messiah might dwell in your hearts through belief, having become rooted and grounded in love, in order that you might be strengthened to firmly with all the set-apart ones, all the Kedoshim, know what is the width and length and depth and height, to know the love of Messiah which surpasses knowledge, in order that you might be filled to all the completeness of Elohim. So what's all this talking about? Is this all just talking about airy-fairy kind of whatever you think the love of Messiah is? No, it's talking about his word. We know that that's what the Spirit's given for. It's to help us to walk in all his statutes and his judgments. It's to help us to become Kedoshim, as it says, so that we know the depths of his love, so that we know who he is in his word. But this is all to do with his word. And you'll find these things, these times when the Spirit speaks are according to his word. Luke 12:11-12 says, and when they bring you into congregations and rulers and authorities, do not worry about how or what you should answer or what you should say. For the Ruach HaKodesh shall teach you in that very hour what you should say, a word of knowledge or a word of wisdom coming to you. Matthew 10:19-20. But when they deliver you up, do not worry about how or what you should speak, for it shall be given to you in that hour what you shall speak. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking in you. What do you think that they're going to be speaking at that time? They're going to be speaking the word of Elohim in accordance with the word of Elohim. 2 Samuel 23:2 says, the Spirit of Yehovah has spoken through me. His word is on my tongue. Okay, this is how he would always speak through his prophets. And Nehemiah 9:28-30 says, but after they had rest, they turned back to do evil before you. Then you left them in the hands of their enemies so that they ruled over them. But when they turned back and cried out to you, you heard from the heavens and delivered them according to your mercy many times, and warned them to bring them back to your Torah. But they acted proudly and did not obey your commands and sinned against your judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. And they gave the rebellious shoulder and hardened their necks and would not hear. And you had patience with them for many years, and did warn them by your Spirit in your prophets. So what did they do? They came and they spoke the word to them again. Acts 21, 3-4 gives us an example of prophecy being given by the Spirit. And having sighted Cyprus, and having passed it on the left, we sailed to Syria and landed at Zoar for the ship which to unload their cargo there. And having found disciples, we remained there 7 days. And they told Shaul through the Spirit not to go up to Jerusalem. And having come to us, he took the girdle of Shaul, bound in his own hands and feet, and said, thus says the Ruach HaKodesh, thus shall the Yahudim at Jerusalem bind the man who owns this girdle and deliver him into the hands of the Gentiles. So it's something very specific. But you'll notice in all of these cases, nobody is there going, I wonder if Yehovah was speaking to me. I wonder if I was being spoken to then. I don't know, I'm going to have to work it out. They all know that they're being spoken to. They have a specific prophecy if it's a prophecy that's being given. It actually reminds me one of the things. When women come together and they talk about all these things and they talk about all the signs that have been leading them in their lives and all of that sort of thing, what does the Apostle Paul tell us that women aren't to do? He says that they're not to teach doctrine, but the thing that I'm thinking of is he says that they're not to interpret prophecy. He says that they're not to teach doctrine because they were deceived by Hasatan. So there's something about the nature of a woman that made her able to be deceived by Hasatan. And if we look at the very basic differences between men and women are more emotional and they're more compassionate. When they come together and they're speaking to each other, they speak with compassion towards one another. So if a prophecy or a sign from Yehovah is given, very unlikely that the women are going to go, sounds like rubbish, that. Man might do it. Okay. And, women and men are of different tendencies. And some women you're going to get that will do that, and some men you're going to get that won't. But generally, Yehovah knows the sexes. He knows how they were designed. He knows what their strengths and weaknesses are. Not that men are above women or women are above men. They're both equal. They've both just got different roles. So the absolute worst thing that you can be doing is coming together and talking about all these signs and what's going on in your life and all of the rest of it with a group of women. Because you're just bringing prophecy to be interpreted by other people, and all they're going to do is they're going to listen to what you're saying and go, oh yeah, that sounds great. Or whatever. I'm not meaning to demean women in this. But they're not going to be the objective interpreters of doctrine and the interpreters of prophecies, and we're told specifically not to do that anyway, whatever your own position on that is. Not what we're to do. It's a dangerous situation, and it leads to people walking in delusion. Okay, misleading spirits and false visions, because we are to diligently guard ourselves. Jeremiah 23, 32-40 says, see, I am against those prophets who prophesy false dreams, declares Yehovah, and relate them and lead my people astray by their falsehoods and by their reckless boasting. But I myself did not send them, nor have I commanded them, and they do not profit this people at all, declares Yehovah. He's not very happy with these people. And when these people or the prophet or the priest ask you, saying, what is the message of Yehovah? Then you shall say to them, what message? I shall forsake you, declares Yehovah. As for the prophet and the priest and the people who say, the message of Yehovah, I shall punish that man and that house. We have to be so careful. If we're going to say that Yehovah has said something, we have to be so careful to ascribe his name to something that we're not even sure about whether he said. That's real danger there. This is what each one says to his neighbor and each one to his brother. What has Yehovah answered and what has Yehovah spoken? Do you recognize this? Conversations that take place. But the message of Yehovah you no longer remember, for every man's message is his own word. For you have changed the words of the living Elohim, Yehovah Sevaot, our Elohim. This is what you say to the prophet. What has Yehovah answered you? And what has Yehovah spoken? But since you say the message of Yehovah, in other words, since you ascribe to it that it was a message that came from Yehovah, therefore, thus said Yehovah, because you say this word, the message of Yehovah, and I've sent to you saying, do not say the message of Yehovah, Therefore, I shall utterly forget you and cast you away from my presence, along with this city that I gave you and your fathers. That's not a situation that you want to be in. Okay? Best advice that I can give. This is what I think Yehovah is saying to me. And get everyone to agree to it. Okay? Do not say the message of Yehovah. Okay? Don't want to be utterly forgotten. You don't want to be cast away from his presence. And I shall put an everlasting reproach on you and an everlasting shame that is not forgotten. Now, if you've done this in the past, you can repent of it. But don't go on in it. Yehovah sends you a warning. Says, don't do these things. These are not good. Send you a warning. Don't harden your neck to it. Ezekiel 13, 1-8 says, and the word of Yehovah came to me saying, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel who prophesy, and say to those who prophesy out of their own heart, hear the word of Yehovah. Thus said the Master Yehovah, woe to the foolish prophets who are following their own spirit without having had the vision. O Israel, your prophets have been like foxes among ruins. You have not gone up into the breaches, nor do you build a wall for the house of Israel to stand in battle on the day of Yehovah. Yehovah says that he will reveal himself to his prophets through a dream, that he will make known to them that they are prophets by him coming to them by a dream. Their visions are false, and their divinations are lies, saying, thus declares Yehovah, when Yehovah has not sent them. Yet they expected the word to be confirmed. They were deluded in and of themselves. They expected that the word would be confirmed by Yehovah because they're deluded. They're not stood on the word. Have you not seen a false vision? And have you not spoken a divination of lies? You say, Yehovah declares when I have not spoken. Therefore, thus said the Master Yehovah, because you have spoken falsehood and seen lies, therefore I am against you, declares the Master Yehovah. You see how dangerous this is. He hates this. He abhors this. Jeremiah 14:14, then Yehovah said to me, the prophets prophesy falsehood in my name. I have not sent them, nor commanded them, nor spoken to them. They are prophesying to you a false vision, worthless divination, and the deceit of their own heart. Again, they're deluded. They believe these things. Jeremiah 29:8, for thus says Yehovah Zevaot, Elohim of Yisrael, let not your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, neither listen to the dreams which you are dreaming. Deuteronomy 18:10-14 says, let no one be found among you who makes his son or daughter pass through the fire, as one who practices divination, or a user of magic, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who conjures spells, or a medium, or a spiritist, or one who calls up from the dead. Okay, you notice the company that interpreting omens is in there. It's not a good thing to do. For whoever does these are an abomination to Yehovah. And because of these abominations, Yehovah, your Elohim, drives them out from before you. Be perfect before Yehovah, your Elohim. Be Kedoshim. For these nations whom you are possessing do listen to those using magic and to diviners. But as for you, Yehovah, your Elohim, has not appointed such to you. So now, praise Yehovah, we're aware of these things and we can just get rid of them. We can repent of them. We can move on and not have this, Yehovah said this, Yehovah's guiding me like this. Oh, this really weird thing happened the other day. It was Yehovah guiding me. Okay, not good. Deuteronomy 18:20-22 tells us how to know whether something is from Yehovah. For the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And when you say in your heart, how do we know the word which Yehovah has not spoken? When the prophet speaks in the name of Yehovah and the word is not or comes not, that is the word that Yehovah has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him. If you think that Yehovah has been telling you something, doesn't come to pass, it wasn't Yehovah. Okay? No guarantee, though, that if a sign or wonder does come to pass, that it is of Yehovah, because as we saw before, Yehovah will prove you. He will test you by those things. But one way that you know that it is not of Yehovah is if it doesn't come to pass. So how does he guide us? Psalm 31:3 says, for you are my rock and my stronghold. For your name's sake, lead me and guide me. So he obviously does lead us and guide us. Isaiah 58:10-11 says, if you extend your soul to the hungry and the satisfied and the afflicted, then your light shall shine as dawn in the darkness and your darkness be as noon. Then Yehovah would guide you continually. Okay, so what we're not saying is that Yehovah doesn't guide his people. Psalm 25:4-5 says, show me your ways, teach me your paths, lead me in your truth and teach me. This is how he guides us as to how he wants us to act in a certain situation, or as to what we're to do. He leads us and guides us according to his word. He gives us a set of instructions that is a living word that can be used in all circumstances. As we saw before, there's laws that you can interpret to see what his heart is behind situations, not just necessarily the one talked about in the law, but in all the situations like that. So you meditate on his word. You pray as David did, for him to show you wondrous things out of his Torah. You meditate on a situation and see how it fits in with his word. That's how he's going to lead us and how he's going to guide us. Oh, Yehovah, lead me in your righteousness. Let them hear your kindness in the morning, for in you I put my trust. Let me know the way in which I should walk. Okay? Is he saying, let me know the way in which I should walk? Bring about these events in my life that I can subjectively interpret and think, oh, maybe this is the way that he wants me to go. No, it's objective. I was stupid and ignorant. I was like a beast toward you. This is how I was. This is me being deceived by all of this spirituality, something that is very deceiving to a person who's born into a very material-focused world. Yet I am always with you. You took hold of my right hand. You lead me by your counsel. Again, it's by his word. And afterward, receive me unto esteem. Teach me to do your will, for you are my Elohim. Let your good spirit lead me in the land of straightness. How? What is his will? Delighted to do your will, O my Elohim. Your Torah is within my heart. Let me instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. Let me counsel, my eye be upon you. You see how he does it? Trust in Yehovah with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways. Meditate on his word. Make everything about him. Every decision that you've got to make it according to his word. Search the word. When I pray for wisdom or pray for guidance, I always pray. I'm not saying this is a prescriptive method to do it, but he leads me by his word. I pray, and then I'll pick up the scriptures, and I won't dip into them and try to do divination via the Bible. I'll pick them up. I'll open them where I was up to, wherever it was. And the number of times that I've done that and thought, this next passage of scripture, I know it very well. And it's got nothing to say about this situation. And then there'll just be something in there that I've just forgotten about, never recognized in the scriptures, and it will answer the situation almost as if he was giving me a word-for-word answer. He can guide you by his word. You can stand on his word. You can pray, you can ask for guidance, you can ask him to lead you. But don't do it by these nonsense ways that will lead you to your own destruction. And when I talk about all of these things, like when I was talking about, people wanting to be led by the Ruach and not by teachers, I don't say it. So, people get very precious over things, don't they? And then they're resistant, they become stiff-necked, and they don't want to hear. The reason that I'm saying these things is because if you can get rid of these ways of death out of your life, then you're going to draw nearer to the source of abundance and to the source of life, and it's going to be of benefit to you. You might have things and you'll be like, I want to hold on to that. I really want to hold on to it. And that's how people are over all kinds of sin and transgression of his word. But if you can just see beyond that and just let go of whatever it is that's leading you astray, then you will be in a better position. Okay, I don't say follow a teacher because I want to be a teacher and I want loads of people to follow me. I've got very little interest in that. I want to teach the word to people, but the idea of having people following me is of absolutely no interest to me. Okay, I do these things, I say these things, which are unpopular. The dislike count has increased on YouTube, but I do it because if people just take hold of them, they'll be in a much, much better position. Genesis 2 verse 19 has got some very important thing, and we'll end on this scripture for us to pay attention to. It says, and from the ground Yehovah Elohim formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called each living creature, that was its name. Yehovah isn't some kind of ridiculous control freak where he's like, oh no, I must have control over every event. He made all the animals. He didn't say, and I'm going to name them. I made them. So he brought them to the man. He said, what are you going to call them? As long as you're tending the garden, you're keeping my ways, you're doing what's right. What are you going to call them, Adam? And it's the same for us in our lives. We don't have to have everything dictated by Yehovah. We can walk through our lives with freedom and know that we're walking in his ways. He will lead us in his ways. He will lead us into what is right. He is intimately involved in our lives. He will bring events about by his power. Adam didn't need some kind of subjective sign to appear before him or, whatever, something to mean something to him and go, oh, that must be what Yehovah wants me to call it. He just got on with it. He just named the animals because that's what was in front of him. Let's take a break. Okay, so the third part of Kedoshim. And in this part, women are really going to love this Torah portion. There's another thing that specifically pertains to women. So you are forewarned. I'm not telling you any of this for any other reason than because it's how you become holy to Yehovah. Okay, do not round the corner of your head, nor destroy the corner of your beard. Do not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor put tattoo marks on you. I am Yehovah. So, this entire lot of instructions are things that they would have used to have done in the nations all around them that they're to be set apart from for the dead. Okay? All of them for the dead. Tattoo marks, destroying or marring in the King James Version the corners of the beard. It's destroying your beard. It's not shaving your beard off. It's destroying your beard. Rounding the corner of the head. Okay, shaving the head for mourning practices, basically. So all of these are mourning practices. And they're wrong to do for the dead. And they are still things that are done today. Well, a few of them are anyway. I remember when my friend Sam died. He died of overdose of benzodiazepines, I think it was. He was found in bed dead. And all of my friends decided that they were going to get a tattoo to remember him. Funnily enough, the tattoo turned out now with hindsight to be, the thing that they used to symbolize the Trinity, like the almost triangular shaped thing. It's very pagan, very New Age in origin. It was that they got tattooed on themselves. And Charlie mentioned the other day that the firefighters in 9/11, they all got their tattoos on them to remember the dead. So it is still, these are still practices that are done. Cuttings in your flesh. Okay, you see the Muslims, don't you, with the big knives doing the cuttings in their flesh. And, this is the same sort of stuff. We're just to be set apart from this. Don't think anyone's going to have a problem being set apart from doing this for the dead. Well, there you go. Do not profane your daughter by making her a whore, so that the land does not whore and the land becomes filled with wickedness. This is what's going to happen. Okay? Don't let your daughter see her value in her sexual value. Okay? Now, that's going to involve wearing revealing clothes. Okay? Because what you're allowing her to do is to objectify herself. What is it about revealing clothes that makes somebody want to wear them? They want to beautify themselves. They want to become more appealing to men. Okay? Don't let her wear makeup. Okay? Wearing makeup is not a thing that we need to do. Okay? What is the root of wearing makeup? What is it about? Okay? It's about beautifying yourself. It's about making yourself more attractive to other people. Okay, so this is a problem. If you're making yourself more attractive to someone, it's a problem in all sorts of ways. Okay? If you are going out and you're a young girl, you're trying to find a husband. Okay, so you're wearing makeup to become more attractive to the opposite sex. What is that doing? It's trying to deceive somebody that you're more attractive than you are, or more attractive to the world's way of thinking about things than you are. These are not Yehovah's ways. These are things that the Gentiles do. We're not to be taking part in any of this. Wearing makeup, beautifying ourselves. What exactly are you trying to do? If you're married to somebody and you're wearing makeup, what are you trying to do? Who are you trying to make yourself attractive to? You're going out into the world trying to make yourself attractive to all of the other fellas in the world. What's that about? Think of the actual spiritual root of these things, what you're actually doing by trying to put makeup on. These are the ways of the Gentiles. They're not things that we should be doing. So as I said, there's going to be loads of dislikes on this video. Oh, can't wear makeup. But yeah, don't do this to your daughter. Don't do it to yourself. Stop seeing yourself as having value in your sexual value to other people. You know, people just think, don't they, oh, I'm just making myself look nice to other people, make myself look presentable to other people, or whatever terms for it. But the actual root of it is you're trying to beautify yourself, to deceive other people, and to make yourself more sexually attractive to just the world. Okay? Not a good practice that we should be doing. We're set apart from that. Cherish my Sabbaths and fear my set-apart place. I am Yahuwah. As you saw before, Leviticus 15:31. Separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness when they defile my dwelling place. If they didn't fear the dwelling place, then this would just be a nonsense to them, wouldn't it? They wouldn't care. Don't come into the camp in uncleanness. To the person who doesn't fear the set-apart place, they just say, well, what? Well, we had sex last night, so I'm unclean. What's the problem? I'm just going to go stroll about in the camp. Okay? And as I've said before, because people get these things misconstrued, that's the physical temple of Yahuwah. They had that in their midst. It's not about us being unclean now and having to separate ourselves in some way because we don't have his physical manifest presence with us. The presence that we have with us is spiritual. And of course, we are to be clean spiritually when his spiritual presence is present within us. You know, we don't defile the temple of God. Do not turn to mediums and do not seek after spiritists to be defiled by them. I am Yahuwah your Elohim. Now, we've looked at this before. I'm going to go through something that I've put up before, but I think that it's good in illustrating exactly what's going on here. We've looked at how people are deceived by spirits that try to lead them into all sorts of stuff. This is also familiar spirits at work. Okay, so in the diagram, we've got this. Can't really see it on the white background, the laser pointer, but the purple circle, okay? Think of that as a top-down view of a tent, a circular tent, okay? And we've got the orange dot there. Orange dots in this are going to represent people. That's your medium or your spiritist. She sat there with a table. The purple dots are familiar spirits, okay? So we have two people approaching. One of them has this familiar spirit which is deceiving the person. The other person, not deceived by this, is saying, this is nonsense, you're wasting your time. Okay, that's their view of reality going into this. The person goes into the tent. This person's got a spirit with them that is familiar with them. That familiar spirit communicates with the other spirits and says, his grandma's elder died 3 months ago. What do the familiar spirits around this woman tell her? I'm hearing from the spirits. A woman, the letter Z, death. That's what the woman's got now. This spiritist, this medium who is hearing from the spirits. The spirits are telling me that there's a woman here with a connection to the letter Z. And the guy's thinking, connection to the letter Z. You know, thinking of Zelda, but, you know, that could just be a cold reading this. I'm getting a strong message of death. I think maybe she's died. Oh, right, okay. That's pretty specific, isn't it? How would this woman know that there's a woman associated with me and the letter Z and death? How she put all of this together? I've just walked in off the street. She didn't know that I was coming. There's no way of her doing a cold reading on me with this. This woman is definitely a psychic, a spiritist. She's got spiritual power. This is a good thing. I'm going to listen to this woman and the things she's got to tell me about my life. She loves him and misses him. She says she loves you and misses you. Okay? An emotive thing. Guy goes out. He goes to his friend and says, it was amazing. She knew about my grandma dying. She had a personal message that sounded just like something she'd say. So now, the person who hears this, having been completely skeptical before, is thinking, maybe. They're opened a little bit more to the deception. You see how these spirits work, how they can easily deceive us by operating in realms that we don't understand. And that when we begin to see, we begin to think, this is good. Okay, this must be good because this is not the usual world that I live in. Verse 32 says, rise up before the grey-headed, and you shall favor the face of an old man, and shall fear your Elohim. I am Yehovah. Okay, so is this what we're to do? We're to raise up when someone with grey hair comes into the room? Right, Charlie. When Charlie comes into the room, are we all to stand up in reverence? Yeah, it's Charlie. Well, if the Torah said that, that's what we'd be to do, wouldn't it? Yeah? I'm sure no one would have a problem with following the instructions of Torah if that's what it said to do. So we need to understand, is this what it's saying to do? Because if it is, let's start doing it from now on. Genesis 15:15, it uses the same word, and it says, as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. It doesn't say you are to be buried when your hair goes grey. Abraham would be very nervous, wouldn't he, if that's what the Lord had said to him. And Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, aged and satisfied, and was gathered to his people. It doesn't say Abraham breathed his last and died with grey hair. Not what the word means. Ruth 4:15, and he shall be to you a restorer of life and the sustainer of your grey hair. He's not some kind of potion that we put on our hair. He's not like some hair nourisher. It's not what Yehovah is to us. Sustainer of your old age. This is what it's saying. Rise up before the old. Pay respect to the old. I don't know. Are we going to call you old? And when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, do not oppress him. Should be pretty basic stuff. Let the stranger who dwells with you to be as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. And you were strangers in the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yehovah your Elohim. Yeshua kind of does this with things when it comes to your brother, the neighbor, the stranger, someone in the world. He kind of muddies the water with them, and he applies things to your brother or to the neighbor, because people came to him, didn't they? And they said, well, who is my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? And he ends up saying, well, it's the Samaritan. You don't know who your neighbor is. It could be that guy who comes and helps you. So the stranger who comes in, don't treat him differently and be like, well, it says love your neighbor as yourself. He's not my neighbor, is he? He's a stranger. Not to be like that, okay? He's to be as the native among you, okay? We're to treat him well. We were strangers in the land of Mitzrayim, in the world. We were strangers. I think everyone can probably relate to that experience. Do no unrighteousness in judgment, in measurement of length, in weight, or in measuring liquids. Have right scales, right weights, a right ephah, and a right hin. I am Yehovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim. Because obviously, if you're living in a culture where there's all merchants and they're all selling stuff, and you go in and you say, I want a pound of potatoes, and they bring out a weight that weighs less than a pound, and they go, okay, this is the pound weight, put this on, and here's your pound of potatoes. Yehovah's saying, don't be like that, don't do that. But beyond this, he's talking about judging righteously again. Have a just weight. Okay, you judge something to be wrong in someone else. Why don't you judge it to be wrong in yourself? Why are you more lenient with yourself than you'd be with someone else that you saw doing it? Yehovah's not like that. He's got an exact right weight. Deuteronomy 25:13-16 says, you shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. Again, you think about your sin. Do you weigh your own sin and think of it lightly? But then when you weigh the sin of others, you weigh it to be heavy. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect weight and a right weight, a perfect and right measure, so that they prolong your days on the soil which Yehovah your Elohim is giving you. For all who do these and all who act unrighteously are an abomination to Yehovah your Elohim. When he sees us acting like that, he thinks that we're acting abominably before him. He doesn't like it. I don't think there's anybody here who cherishes the idea of being an abomination before Yehovah. So these are the sort of things, James was talking before about just judging people, the poor and the rich, differently. And he was saying, if you're doing that, you're a transgressor of the Torah. I'm sure he'd say exactly the same thing about this. If you're judging people differently, depending on who they are, their social standing with you or whatever, you become a transgressor of the Torah. So these are the things that as Kedoshim, we take on board, we make a part of ourselves, and our light shines brighter unto the perfect day. A false scale is an abomination to Yehovah, but a perfect weight is his delight. You can delight Yehovah by dealing with the situation correctly, by not going just off your instincts of how it should be or whatever. But you can delight him in the way that you respond to situations. Do not judge lest you be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged, and with the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you. So this is probably the most well-known Bible verse among people who do not know any of the Bible. Okay? Oh no, don't judge me. Don't judge lest you be judged. Is that what it's saying? Well, with the judgment you judge, you shall be judged. You have a right weight. Okay, so with the judgment that you judge to someone else, that's the judgment that you should expect to receive back to yourself. The measure that you measure to someone else, that's the measure that Yehovah is going to give to you. And why do you look at the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? Or how is it you say to your brother, let me remove the splinter out of your eye, and see a plank is in your own eye? Okay, so he's to just not remove the splinter from each other's eyes. Just say, let us go on with splinters in our eyes. Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, then you shall see clearly to remove the splinter out of your brother's eye. That's what you're to do. It's not just don't judge. It's get yourself right, and then you can help other people. Mark 4:23-25 says, if anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. And he said to them, take heed what you hear. Take heed to it. With the same measure you use, it shall be measured to you, and more shall be added to you who hear. Okay, so we've all hear the Torah. We all have great understanding of the Torah. And that means that the judgment that we make will be based upon the Torah. So it means that that same judgment will be made to us in return. So if we hear, if we understand them, it's much more incumbent upon us than to someone who is ignorant of these things to do them. More shall be added to you who hear. For whoever possesses, to him more shall be given. But whoever does not possess, even what he possesses shall be taken away from him. So if people don't have ears to hear, I haven't seen it happen. I've seen this happen. Even what they understood at one point is taken from them. And they wander off into nonsense. They just seem to lose it. It's just the scripture. But for us who hear, more will be added to us. And we think, oh no, more stuff that we're going to have to do. But it's not like that. Yehovah blesses us more. He adds more abundance and more life to us as we draw closer to him, the source of life. It just becomes incumbent upon us, if we actually love him, to do these things. Because we love him, we find out more about him. It's not some burden that's put upon us. It's freedom that's given to us. For those who don't have ears to hear, even if they get a little bit of truth, soon it will be nothing. Romans 2:1-8 says, therefore, O man, you are without excuse. Everyone who judges, for in which you judge another to condemn yourself, since you who judge practice the same wrongs. Okay? We know that the judgment of Elohim is according to truth against those who practice such wrongs. We know that. We're absolutely certain of that fact. Okay? So if we then go and we practice the same things that we know judgment is going to come on people for doing, how much more judgment is put on us for understanding it? And do you think, O man, you who judge those practicing such wrongs and doing the same, that you shall escape the judgment of Elohim? How would that be possible? If you understand the word of Elohim, how would it be possible that you would escape the judgment? Or do you despise the riches of his kindness and tolerance and patience? And we looked at the meaning of the word despise, it's to lightly esteem. The riches of his kindness and tolerance and patience, not knowing that the kindness of Elohim leads you to repentance. That's what it's for. You've been given this kindness. What are you going to do with it? You now understand. You know that this judgment is coming on the world. You know you're going to be judged by the Torah. All of that is clear and present in your mind. How do you think Yehovah expects you to act with all of that knowledge? But according to your hardness and your unrepentant heart, you are treasuring up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath and revelation of the righteous judgment of Elohim. Oh yeah, the world, they're done for. They're doing all of this sin, all of this wrongdoing. They've got no idea of what they're doing. They don't know at all. We know what we're doing. Who shall render to each, Yehovah, who shall render to each one according to his works? Everlasting life to those who by persistence in good work seek for esteem and respect and incorruptibility. The Kedoshim, those who move towards holiness where there is life. But wrath and displeasure to those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth, but obey righteousness. And this is written to us. It's not written to the world. They're the ones who do not hear. Their judgment is going to be much lighter than ours. And you shall cherish all my laws and all my judgments and do them. I am Yehovah. So you do all these things. You do all the things that make you Kedoshim. And you will cherish all of the laws of Yehovah because you'll see the beauty in them. And Yehovah spoke to Moshe saying, say to the children of Yisrael, any man of the children of Yisrael or of the strangers who sojourn in Yisrael, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, shall certainly be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. So this is what they used to do with their kids. Quite probably, knowing human nature, with their unwanted kids. Oh, we'll give that kid to Moloch. We'll just burn that kid up. Okay? Obvious parallel with modern society with abortion. Okay? This is how Yehovah feels about it. I shall set my face against that man and cut him off from the midst of his people, because he has given of his offspring to Moloch, so as to defile my set-apart place and to profane my set-apart name. The people of Yehovah going about practicing these things. And if the people of that land at all hide their eyes from that man, as he gives any of his offspring to Moloch, and they do not kill him, then I shall set my face against that man, against this clan, and I shall cut him off, and all who go whoring after him, even go whoring after Moloch, from the midst of their people. So, if you hide your eyes from the sins of these people, you say, oh yeah, just let them get on with it. We can see Yehovah's heart here, can't we? And how he feels about sin in the midst of his people and about people who turn their eyes from it, don't do anything about it. He feels that they bear some responsibility as well. And the soul who turns to mediums and to spiritists, same word, panah, okay, turns their face to mediums and to spiritists to go whoring after them. I shall set my face against that soul and cut him off from the midst of his people. It's interesting, okay, Leviticus 20, just so you know what to expect, is pretty much a big list of saying, if anyone does this, which I've told you not to do in Leviticus 18 and 19, okay, the instructions on how to be Kedoshim, either how to be Kedoshim in the Kadosh Eretz, the Holy Land, or how to be Kedoshim personally. If you do this, it's going to bring death. You can choose the holy, which is going to bring everlasting life. But if you choose to defile this, then it will bring death, because that's what it is, the opposite of being holy, of doing these instructions that are to make you holy. Cut him off from the midst of his people. And you shall set yourselves apart, and shall be set apart, for I am Yehovah your Elohim. What is it to get rid of the sinners from your midst? It's to set yourselves apart. Set yourselves apart from that sin. And you shall cherish my laws and do them. I am Yehovah who set you apart. For everyone who curses his father or mother shall certainly be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood is on him. It's an interesting concept that is required for someone to be put to death, is that their blood is on them. When Yehovah prescribes the death penalty, the blood of that person is on them themselves. Exodus 20:13 says you do not murder, so what are we doing stoning people to death? Okay? Genesis 9:5-6 says, but only your blood for your lives I require. From the hand of every beast I require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood is shed. For in the image of Elohim he is made man. These people, their blood is on them. Okay, they're the ones responsible for their blood. And do not profane the land where you are, for blood profanes the land, and the land is not pardoned for the blood that is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it. That's the usual way. So stoning people wouldn't be a good thing to be involved in, but their blood is on them. And a man who commits adultery with the wife of another man, who commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, the adulterer and the adulteress, shall certainly be put to death. And a man who lies with the wife of his father has uncovered the nakedness of his father. Both of them shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And a man who lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall certainly be put to death. They have made confusion, their blood is upon them. And a man who lies with a male as he lies with a woman, both of them have done an abomination. They shall certainly be put to death. The blood is upon them. And a man who marries a woman and her mother, it is wickedness. They are burned with fire, both he and they, that there be no wickedness in your midst. And this gives me an opportunity to speak about something else, which has surfaced a number of times in discussions I've seen people having, not here, online. Okay? A man who marries a woman and a mother. Okay? So what's this saying? It's saying a man who marries two women. Okay? So what it's saying by implication is that it's okay to marry two women. That in and of itself is not a problem. When a man has two wives, okay, so is it the case that we can just have multiple partners? That we should have multiple partners? Is that how it's supposed to be? Well, I think everybody instinctively knows that that's not right, that no one would like to be in that situation. Genesis 2:24, we're told the proper pattern for these things. For this cause shall a man leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And then you go out and you find another wife, and she becomes one flesh with the both of you. That's the way that it was supposed to be. Yehovah, for his own reasons, doesn't prescribe against marrying multiple women, for whatever reason that was. And I think that we can see the way that the human race expanded across the planet, and maybe that was the reason, I don't know. But Yehovah doesn't forbid it, but it doesn't mean that he promotes it either, or that it's the way that we should be. 1 Timothy 3 verse 2 says, an overseer then should be blameless, the husband of one wife. This is somebody who's in spiritual authority. They are to have one wife. So this is what we are to aim for. Obviously, it's a good thing. It says that it's a good thing to want to be one of these people. Okay, the husband of one wife. And people will turn this about and say, oh no, what it actually means is that they have to be married. The person has to be married. It's nonsense though. Do you think that Paul, in his writing to Timothy, was saying, oh, and don't think that I can be an overseer of a church? Or Yeshua. Forget about that. Okay, no. They should be definitely married. No, it says one wife for a reason. It's telling us the number of wives that this person should have. Since we know, according to Torah, that it's not forbidden to have two wives, it's telling us that this person should only have one wife. And let attendants be the husbands of one wife as well. You say, well, what about David? David had multiple wives, didn't he? David wasn't in spiritual leadership. Okay, he was the king of the country. He was in the physical leadership of the country. But he wasn't a priest. He wasn't in spiritual leadership. The people who you're to look to for examples are to have one wife, just as it was from the beginning. Okay? So, yes, it's permitted by Torah to have two wives. Is that something we should be aiming for? Absolutely not. I'm told that clearly. And a man who has intercourse with a beast, he shall certainly be put to death, and the beast you kill. Every time this comes up, we make the point. Modern Christianity likes to say that the law is done away with unless it was specifically reiterated in the New Testament. So what would they say about this? I think that they would probably point to this scripture and go, oh, no, God says that you can't do it, because they're confused. In Acts 19:17-20, it says, and this became known to all, both Yehudim and Greeks dwelling in Ephesus. And fear fell on them, and the name of the Master Yeshua was made great. And many who had believed came confessing and declaring their deeds. Okay? Many of those who had practiced magic brought their books together, burning them before all. And they reckoned up the value of them and found it to be 50,000 pieces of silver. So the word of the Master was growing mightily and prevailing. So what did they do in the book of Acts? They went and they taught them the Torah, which forbids magic. And they went and they burnt all their books. As I said, they were confessing and declaring their deeds. People get very confused over what it is to confess your deeds before Yehovah. People have kind of this idea that as long as you say, what I'm doing is wrong before you, that you're fine. Okay? If we confess our sins, he is trustworthy and righteous to forgive us the sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Does it make any sense that you go before Yehovah and go, keep offending you on purpose all the time? But I've read in your word that if I tell you, you're going to forgive me. Doesn't make any sense, does it? We want to understand again, when people are quoting in the New Testament and saying things, they're not just coming up with doctrine from nowhere, they're quoting from the Tanakh. Proverbs 28:13 says, he who hides his transgressions does not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them, which is exactly what they did in the book of Acts when they all came out with their books worth 50,000 pieces of silver and burned them, finds compassion or finds mercy, finds grace. And a woman who approaches any beast and mates with it, you shall kill the woman and the beast. They shall certainly be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And the man who takes his sister, or his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is wickedness, and they shall be cut off from before the eyes of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness. He bears his iniquity. And a man who lies with a woman during her faintness, during her period, it means sickness, which is interesting, isn't it? Okay, part of this whole thing that you become unclean by, part of it is the period. And it is, you are involved in this cycle of life and death. But quite literally, this word to refer to a woman's period is her sickness, her faintness. And uncovers her nakedness. He has laid bare her flow. It's part of the curse, of course. And she has uncovered the flow of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from the midst of their people. And do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister, nor of your father's sister, for that is laying bare one's own flesh. They bear their iniquity. And a man who lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They bear their sin. They die childless. That's quite a strange punishment, isn't it? To die childless. Oh, they're just kind of thrown in this Torah. Oh, these people, burn them to death. These people, they're going to die childless. For whatever reason, Yehovah has deemed that this sin requires this punishment. And a man who takes his brother's wife, it is uncleanness. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They are childless. And you shall cherish all my laws and all my judgments and do them, so that the land where I'm bringing you to dwell does not vomit you out. Okay? You are to be holy. You're going to go and dwell in the holy land. You do all of these things. You get rid of these people from among you. Make yourselves holy. Do that and you'll cherish all of his laws. These things that we've been looking at today are extremely important. Even the things that you've read and you thought, I'm not really doing that. I'm going to have to incorporate that into my life. And do not walk in the laws of the nation which I am driving out before you, for they do all these, and therefore I loathe them. But I say to you, you are going to possess their land, and I myself give it to you to possess it. A land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yehovah your Elohim, who has separated you from the peoples. You're set apart from the peoples. And you shall make a distinction between clean beasts and unclean, and between unclean birds and clean. Do not make yourselves abominable by beast or by bird, or whatever creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. So you see why all of these things are important. Even the eating of clean food as opposed to unclean food, it's for a purpose. It's so that we're holy, we're set apart, we're not involved in this realm of death. If we enter into covenant with him, and we were living in the land, and we were to actively involve ourselves in these realms of death, then the punishment is death. You've chosen death over life. You shall be set apart to me, for I am Yehovah. I, Yehovah, am set apart, and have separated you from the peoples to be mine. So think about it. Okay, all of the Gentiles that are around us, they live a certain way. And we can desire sometimes to live in that same way. Okay, the lust of the flesh make us want to live in that certain way. Their way, we need to completely distance ourselves from it. Look at your lives, see whether there's any influence of the world in how you live. Get it apart, set it apart. If you do that, you'll be set apart to Yehovah. For he is set apart and he separated us from the people. And a man or woman in whom there is a medium All who are spiritists shall certainly be put to death. They are to stone them with stones. Their blood is upon them. Let's pray.
Father, thank you that you've set us apart from the world. Thank you that you're so clear in the things that you say. Thank you that you chastise us when we go astray and that you call us back to you. You give us another chance and that you're merciful and compassionate. I pray, Father, that you would strengthen us according to your Spirit so that we can walk in your Torah and claim the life that you've offered to us. Thank you for the word that you've given us so that we can make ourselves clean and make ourselves holy before you. Thank you that you're there in our lives, that you're guiding us and you're leading us to you and to your kingdom. Thank you, Father. Amen.